Okay, we are back for monocolor black, monocolor red, monocolor green.
Woohoo!
Woo!
Surely we'll take this down in a timely manner.
I mean, I do enjoy just talking about
Oh,
cards
for sure.
for a long time. Like, we're limited junkies. This is what we love. So, yeah, but we do also literally have to go to bed tonight, so we will figure that out. We'll be fine.
Most nights we don't have to go to bed because sleep is optional. This is a joke. Everyone gets sleep. It's important. Anyway, let's hop right into it with Engine Rat. It's a single black for a 1/1 death touch. Typhoid Rats is at you. But it also has 5 and a black. Each opponent loses 2 life. Not
So
a
that's
tap
just an
ability,
activated ability,
not an
no
exhaust, not a tap ability, just 6 mana, dome them for 2 on your defensive 1-drop.
So this is only marginally better than Typhoid Rats, but
Yes.
Typhoid Rats is pretty good.
I like this card a lot. I don't think it's particularly great. I think it's just a fine defensive body. But yeah, Typhoid Rats, good at trading off, always, like we've seen it in green Sedge Scorpion as well, always just like, and like the Snake more recently, always a serviceable card. Like, never going to like blow your socks off, but like it'll trade for a 2-drop or a bigger creature and like make your opponent's attacks difficult. And this one makes your opponent's attacks difficult and also gives you a late game mana sink, which I'm not like overjoyed about. 6 mana is a lot, and like there's going to be a lot of good ways to spend mana in this format, so it's not like, yes, I finally have a way to use my mana that I didn't have anything else to do with. But it is like, if you don't have something to use your mana on, like it is gonna slowly clock them, and it can add up.
Yep, I think this card is good, like a solid common. One thing I do want to note, I was watching the Joint Exploration set review, which was Jason, and they had a guest on as well instead of CFT during our dinner break, and Jason pointed out there are just a lot of activated abilities in this set.
Yes.
This is one of them, and I just want to go back on the 2-mana 0/4 that we talked about really early on, that taps for mana for abilities. That also can cycle cards.
Yeah.
So I just want to note that card probably is a little bit better than we graded it earlier. It also works somewhat well with this. So, yeah, I think this card is good. I just wanted to note kind of the pattern of activated abilities that we've been seeing, like almost all the blue cards.
I mean, that factored pretty strongly into my evaluation of the card already.
Yeah, maybe I was just underestimating it. So anyway, this I would give it like a 7, maybe even a 6, depending on how good the Death Toucher is. 7.5.
Like, it's, I think, a solid common, but I'm not like prioritizing it.
Yeah, I think 7 is fair.
It's just like a good defensive body.
And I guess because this is a new episode, technically, we should just remind people of our grading scale. We're grading on 1 to 10, where 1 is the strongest. It means you're first picking the card. And then 10 is you're picking it in the back of the pack. You sort of expect it to come around for free and just pick them up like whenever you want to. So that's our grading scale. Just wanted to, at the beginning of this, reaffirm that.
All right, let's continue on.
We've got Grim Bauble. It's a sweet one. So single black for an artifact. When it enters, target creature an opponent controls gets -2/-2 until end of turn. And you can pay 2 and a black, sacrifice it, I guess tap it as well, and surveil 2.
Yeah, I think this card is great. Potential to be best black common. Like, 1 mana, obviously it's not as good as a card like Stab in that it's not instant speed, and a lot of the leverage you can get out of these -X/-X spells can be like, even if they don't kill a creature, they're going to shrink something in combat and let you trade. And so this doesn't have that dimension, which makes it like not as good as it might appear at first, because we're so used to like Stab from the last format being like a premium common. That being said, incidental artifacts are nice, and being able to cash this in for Surveil 2 late game, also like nice upside. Like, I think this is a lot of like little incidental things that add up to it being like pretty nice to have.
Yeah, I don't think this is going to be like incredibly premium, because -2/-2 really does not kill a ton of creatures. It just kills all the small creatures.
Yeah.
So I would put it at, I'd say a 5. I think you're going to be picking this up early mid pack and be pretty happy about it, but you're not like first picking it ever.
I agree. I think 5 is a good number for it. Next up we have Deathless Pilot. 1 in a black for a 2/2 with the pilot ability. It's a zombie pilot, and it can saddle, mounts, and crew vehicles with its power of 2 greater, so it's 4 power for crewing and saddling. 3 and a black, return this card from your graveyard to your hand. So we have a 2 mana 2/2, which like in combat, pretty below, like serviceable but pretty mediocre, but also like better as with vehicles obviously, and then
it's got some meaningful upside.
Although notably, like if you're using it to saddle mounts and crew vehicles, you're trading off with it less. So those two abilities kind of work against each other a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. This is just kind of a one-card way to make sure that you can always crew vehicles, which is sort of nice.
Yeah.
So that you don't ever get stuck in that game state where the opponent just targets all your creatures with removal and then strands your vehicles. That's usually not going to be a problem in this set, but like it's a real thing. This card's fine, very medium common. I'd say like an 8 probably.
Yeah, I'd say an 8. Like you'll play it if you need to fill out your 2-drop slot, and there's a lot of ways to spend mana. So like 4 mana return it to your hand is not always the most impactful thing. You can
I think
do.
the key there is just that like 4 mana is a lot of mana to spend, and usually you don't want to just return a 2/2 to your hand.
Yeah, agreed.
Next, we've got Wreckage Wickerfolk, which is 1 and a black for a 1/3 flyer that enters and surveils 2, and it's an artifact as well.
Oh, I think
this card's pretty sweet.
It's sweet. I think it's notably worse than the blue one. The blue 1/3 flyer, like its surveil 2, I think is worse than the optionality to become a 3/4 flyer, 3/5 flyer later.
I agree.
But this also is an artifact.
It's an artifact.
And like
Surveilling 2 is pretty nice for setting things up, although there's not a ton of graveyard stuff, but I think what is centered in black and green, so that's pretty good.
And like we established before, 1/3 flyer, pretty good at building speed.
I agree, yeah. So I think like very solid defensive 2-drop is how I would put it in the black decks. 8 probably.
Yeah, I think that checks out for me.
I guess it's pretty good at speed as well. I think we were saying so. Like
it could be a 7 or an 8. I think it's around that range.
Yeah,
we'll
I think
see.
It's
totally very much a contextual card, and based on how much its synergies actually care about it.
Yep.
Maximum Overdrive. 1 and a black for an instant. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. It gains Death Touch and Indestructible until end of turn. See, this is a fine trick. 2 mana is a little bit
totally fine combat
clunky,
trick.
but
like it will win the combat, but this is a lot worse than the lifelink indestructible +1/+1 counter trick, just because Death Touch only helps you win combats, and this is already helping you win the combat. Like, yes, it's really, really, really good at winning combats, but it's only ever going to be a 1-for-1 in that sense. You're not really going to get any more value on board out of it except the counter, which is pretty marginal. 2 mana is like just fine for a combat trick. You'd really rather have it cost 1 to be able to get consistent mana advantages. This card's fine to fine minus. Like, it's not great. Spell slots obviously are kind of hard to fit into a vehicle format. I'd put it at like an 8 or a 9.
I'd also want to note with the card that we've seen like the blue removal spell, the white removal spell, Exiles, blue one's a Claustrophobia. Like, the more of these effects we see that like Exile or like Lock Down or put on top of a library, the less removal spells this card actually protects your creatures from. And so I think it's going to be pretty unreliable in how it actually protects your creatures from interaction, so it's going to be more of just a combat trick. That makes me a lot lower on the card. I think I want to start at a 9.
Okay, I'm totally fine with that, yeah. I think structurally it's going to be hard to want this actively in this format.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess we accidentally skipped over one. Let me just go back really quickly. And, oh, nope. All right, hold on. I lost the window. Give me 1 second. Gonna go find this again. I meant to undo that, but I actually just closed the window, so hold on. Holding. This should only take a minute. I'm just gonna reopen the presentation that Jason gave us and then recapture the screen in OBS. There we go. Just gotta scroll down to find the card. Alright, this is the one we're looking at. I'm gonna go back to the slideshow and also just want to make sure that we're streaming correctly. Gotta share the screen. Here we go.
We are so back.
All right, we are so back. So, Grim Javelineer. 2 and a black for a 3/2 human warrior, and whenever you attack, target attacking creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. When that creature dies this turn, surveil 1.
Ooh.
Interesting.
So notably, this doesn't give, like, the other kinds of this effect we've seen have give some sort of like buff, like death touch, double strike, stuff like that. This, rather than trying to force your creatures through, is trying to force your creatures to trade. Which is an interesting, different dynamic. And so it's like you want to kind of be attacking with creatures that they are either forced to or don't want to trade with and get them through.
Yeah, this is, I think, pretty significantly worse than granting an ability.
I agree.
But 3 mana is nice. I think you're pretty rarely going to get the Surveil one. Like, I think this is mostly just 3 mana 3/2 whenever you attack, a creature gets +1/+0, which is kind of nice, but, like...
Pretty medium, yeah.
Pretty medium. This seems, again, like a pretty medium common to me. It doesn't seem to have many synergies in this set, I would say. So... Yeah. I would put it at like an 8.
I'd put it at like
filler.
An 8 or a 9. It's like just like... Yeah, I'd probably put it at 8 just because it will like meaningfully affect some combat math and make like some creatures attack a little bit better.
I'm never sad to have this in my 3-drop slot, but I'm never happy to.
Yeah, agreed. Next up we have Mutant Surveyor. This is going to be 2 and a black for a Mutant Scout 2/3. Start your engines. 2 mana, this creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. And then max speed 3 mana, exile from your graveyard, draw a card.
I like this cycle a lot.
The cycle is sweet. This card, so 3 mana, 2/3, obviously we don't love that rate. 2 mana get +1/+1 until end of turn. So that's like, for 2 mana it's a 3/4 in combat, and 4 mana it's a 4/5. The third of activation on that is nice, but unfortunately I'm also like kind of turned off by its base power being pretty low, and so they can kind of a lot of the time just like ignore it and let it through, or like if you're spending your mana on that, you're not spending your mana on the many other things to spend mana on in this format.
I'm really noticing, like, yes, every creature has an activated ability.
Yes.
It's kind of crazy.
It's wild. This really is the Enigma Jewel format.
Yeah, so I think that 0/4 probably is just really good.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I think this, again, is like a very fine 3-drop. I would say it's a little bit better than the 3/2 that we just saw. I like it a little bit more just because you're getting, like, roughly equal amount of value on board in a very approximate way, and then the max speed, exile it, and draw from your graveyard is pretty nice to have.
Agreed, yeah.
So,
like,
it's solid.
Like 7.5.
Yeah, 7 to an 8.
I don't think it's, like, I'm not crazy about it, but, like, it's nice to have.
Next up, Risky Shortcut. 2 and a black for a sorcery. Draw 2 cards, and each player loses 2 life.
Divination, is that you?
Not really. Usually this is a negative overall effect, because if you're drawing cards, you'd rather be going up life and prolonging the game.
I think this is like worse than Divination, even though it hits them.
It does increase your speed. That's notable.
That's true.
So this is a pretty good aggressive, like, finisher, like a little bit of reach, a little bit of speed enabling, a little bit of card advantage in your deck that is a little bit worried about running out of cards. But ultimately, I don't think this is going to be super valuable. It's pretty bad in a race. It's not exactly what you want to be doing on turn 3 in your aggressive deck.
Also, notably, I think multiple copies fall off. Like, it's a card, like, I think the first copy could be nice to have as, like, your, like, 21st card in your, like, aggressive speed decks. Or, like, any sort of, like, speed, like, either aggressive speed or, like, good enough defensive speed. Like, but I think the second copy, like, you never want to see 2 of them in your hand. Yes. And, like, it's not that valuable.
I mean, it's less you don't want to see 2 of them in your hand than if it was just you lose 2 life, because draining them for 4 can end a game. But
I think you just don't want that many of this effect in your deck.
I agree.
Is mostly what I'm saying.
So I think this is pretty bad, but playable. I would put it in 8 or a 9.
I think I'd put it at 9.
I think 9 is fair.
Like, you'll pick one up if you need it, but don't think you want to have to prioritize this.
I think that's right. Okay, 9 for Risky Shortcut.
Spin Out. 1 black instant. Destroy target creature or vehicle. Murder.
It's a Moida.
It's a Moida.
It's a murder for a vehicle set. Yeah, this is fine. Murder is sometimes quite good, sometimes quite mediocre in Modern Limited. This feels like a set where it'll be somewhere in between, probably. Like, destroying a big vehicle is good, but there's also a lot of cheap creatures or creatures that get value or have activated abilities or from the graveyard or whatever.
Yeah.
Card's fine. I'd put it at like a 6,
I
maybe?
think it's
a 7?
I'd start at a 6. It could go up to a 5. It could go down to 7.
Yeah, I think that's fair. 6 for a spin out. Next up, we've got Packed Doll Terror. Another one of my favorite stat lines. 3 and a black for a 3/4 artifact creature toy. Whenever this creature or another artifact you control enters, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life.
I like it.
I like it a lot.
Sounds sweet.
Yeah.
It's like this is like what you'd want out of like a common payoff for a synergy set. Like 4 mana 3/4 kind of awkwardly understated a little bit, but like very serviceable. Like it's kind of like
3/4s are good at prolonging the game, I would say.
Yes, this card is like you want to deploy it first, and so it being on 4 mana means like all the artifacts you play before it. Like you're not gonna hold artifacts to proc this, and so that. But like every artifact you play after it draining is like it's gonna add up, especially if you have like good sources of card advantage and stuff like that. Like
you don't need that many drains for this to have done something pretty impactful. Like I think 3 drains and it gives you 1 already means that your card was pretty good.
Yeah.
So I think this is like better than it looks on the surface, but
I agree.
Can't be incredible. Maybe there's a couple like synergy decks. Like if you get 2 of these out, obviously you're kind of gaming.
Yeah.
I would put this at like a 6, maybe a 7, just because it's a 4-drop.
I think I'd put it 6.5, like around there.
Yeah, I think we're in agreement.
Next up, Ripclaw Wrangler. 3 and a black vehicle. It's a 4/3. When this vehicle enters, each opponent discards a card. Crew 2. It doesn't have any evasion or anything. It's just a vanilla 4/3 vehicle. But at ETBs, each opponent discards a card. I don't think I love it.
I also don't love it. This is not exactly a 2-for-1. It's kind of a 2-for-1, but like 4/3 vehicle with crew 2 is not 100% of a card. It's like 75% of a card, and they're often just going to be able to discard a land and not be super impacted.
Or late game, they'll just have an empty hand. Because this set, I think, either you're holding lands to loot them away, or you're playing out all your lands anyway. So like, actually, it seems hard for discarding a card to be super high impact on turn 4.
I agree. So, not a huge fan of this, but it's like decent rate, I would say. Like you're getting 2 pieces of cardboard kind of for this.
Yeah.
I think it's again very average common. Put it at like a 7 or an 8.
I think I would not go higher than an 8.
Okay. I think 8 is fine.
I think the 4/3 crew 2 vehicle for 4 is like really kind of not a body I'm excited about. I think there's plenty of other better vehicles I want to play, and I don't want to play that many vehicles.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. Okay, I think 8, maybe even like a 9. Like this might just end up being a card that you truly just don't prioritize ever.
Yeah, I could see it ending up as a 10.
I could see that for sure. Yeah.
I think starting at an 8 or a 9 is where I want to be.
Next up, Streaking Oil Gorger. We got a streaker. 4 and a black for a 3/3 with flying haste. Start your engines, and then with max speed it has lifelink. So obviously flying haste, good at getting up your speed. You don't want to be starting your engines on turn 5, but if you have to, this will do it. Lifelink is nice. It's a nice payoff. Like a 3/3 lifelink flyer is a real relevant board impacting creature. 3/3 flying haste for 5. I'm not into it.
It's not that different from a 4 mana 3/3 flyer. Like a bit worse, I'd say. But like in terms of how you're clocking them, how like the actual combat math of that, it's about the same.
Yeah, I do think that like the upside on this is not huge. Like,
I think a 3/3 flying, like if you play this out with max speed, 3/3 flying lifelink haste is a big swing.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Like I'm not like overjoyed about this card, and I think as a 5-drop, it's going to be a
I do
high
think it's
contention.
playable.
But I think it's quite playable. I'd want to start at an 8.
Sure, I might be more like a 9 on this just because I have
yeah.
I have high expectations of my 5 drops, but like
That's fair. I think it might be closer to a 9. Like I think you probably just want to grab these on the wheel. Like I don't think they'll be hard to pick up, and you maybe just want like 1. But
yeah,
I
would say 9 for Oil Guard.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
Next up,
Siphon Fuel. 4 and a black for an instant. Target creature gets -6/-6 until end of turn. You gain 2 life. Throttle Helix.
Throttle Helix. No, I'm not interested in this.
I'm mildly interested in it, but not very.
5 mana is just so much to kill a creature.
5, and it doesn't kill vehicles consistently.
Yeah.
Like you have the vehicle.
Obviously, instant speed helps with that, but still.
Yeah, like this is a card. If your deck is like low on interaction, you'll pick it up and play it, and you'll be happy enough.
You might play it if your deck is low on interaction. Like, I think in these days in limited, 5 mana removal spells, just you don't have to play them if your deck is otherwise full of efficient effects.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to have removal necessarily.
Yeah.
I think this card's quite bad. You will play it sometimes. The gaining 2 life, look, that matters. It's somewhat relevant. It's kind of nice that they gave us that, but like, I want more because this is just such an inefficient cost. Like, I'm losing much more than 2 life by this costing 5 rather than 4.
Mm-hmm.
I would give this a 9, but I'm almost considering giving it a 10.
I think I am good with it at 9. I think I like it better than a lot better than a lot of the cards you've given 10s.
I think that's right, yeah. It like, you put it in your deck and it's not horrible. Removing a creature is a really valuable effect. And paying 5 mana for that, you don't love it, but like, you will do it sometimes.
Yeah, agreed.
Next up we have Chitin? I don't know, I think Chitin.
Chitin.
No. Gravestalker, which is 5 and a black for a 5/4 Insect Warrior, but it has cost reduction. It costs 1 less for each artifact and or creature in your graveyard, and it also has cycling for 2.
I like it.
I like it.
I think it's cute how it enables other copies of itself.
Yeah, I mean, you can build a deck with a ton of copies of this. I wouldn't totally recommend it, but like, it's fine. And then just generically, like, you really want to get this to cost 4 mana, and then it's fine. Like, 4 mana 5/4 is like totally fine and limited, and that's probably what it's going to cost on average the most. I think it's pretty hard to be able to cast it for 4 mana on turn 4, but sometimes you'll do that, and then it's possible too that like late in the game it will cost 2 and allow you to double spell in a really nice way. The card's fine. I don't think it's great.
Yeah, it's just, and it is just like vanilla stats once you discount it. It's not like doing anything crazy like we saw. Like, so many creatures in the set have abilities and like enters the battlefield and stuff. This doesn't.
It's just big.
It's just big. And it's not even
huge,
that big. It's just a 5/4.
Right.
I think I'd want to put this at like an 8 or a 9.
I think it's a little bit higher upside just because you can have these like, you've got the 2-drop that surveils 2.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's true.
And it's kind of just higher upside than a lot of the cards we've given like 8s.
Yeah.
I think this card can go in a deck where it ends up being quite strong. So I would put it at a 7. I mean, I'm not going too crazy.
I guess I don't think it ever can be quite strong as a 5/4 that's like sometimes efficient. Like, it's not doing much besides being stats. But
I don't know. I think you can make a deck that is kind of built around these that can cast them for 2 times on turn 6 a lot. That kind of thing. Or like double spell on turn 6 with it with a lot of frequency.
Which is fine.
Again, that's fine. It's not great, which is why I think it's like slightly higher upside than the very medium commons, and so I'd put it at like a 7.
Sure. I think that's fine. Locust Spray. Black mana for an instant. Target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn, cycling for a single black mana. Here's our X1 killer.
That's the X1 killer. It doesn't really kill things with value, which is kind of nice news for the X1s, I would say.
Yeah. It's just like it lets you...
The most you'll get is like +1 or 2 mana,
Yeah.
which is not a huge amount of value for a thing that's specifically about killing X1s. Obviously, this can be used as a combat trick as well, opportunistically, which is sort of nice. Cycling for a black is very low cost, but I'm not super high on this card. Like,
I think I'm like pretty happy. And a lot of decks to have the first copy. If you're cycling 2, I'd be a lot less happy. But having cycling for 1 mana means that like there'll be times when the card is just gonna kill an enemy creature and like either let my creature connect or just like slow down the game enough.
I agree. I would put it this way. I would say I'm happy to have the first copy, but I don't feel like I need to go out of my way to get it by any means.
I would agree with that, yeah.
Like, I don't think this is an effect that you need access to necessarily. It's just an effect that, like, will never be terrible and, you know, it might be good sometimes. So you'll play it because it has cycling for 1. If you have it, but you don't need to prioritize it in the draft, I would probably give this, like, a 9.
I think I'd still want to take it, the first copy, over, like, a lot of the medium commons we put at, like, an 8. And maybe even 1 or 2 of the ones we put at 7. So I think I'd put it between a 7 and an 8.
Okay.
Like,
I think I'm taking a stand here, and I'm saying I'm not taking this over, like, a medium creature unless I'm in, like, a cycling synergy or, like, a discard deck. And I just don't see that happening very often in black, but...
I don't know, I feel like we've also just seen, like, a couple, like, X1s, like, in every point of this, just, like, floating around.
But I think my point is that, like, I'm not that excited if I'm able to trade this for an X1. I'm just, like... whelmed. I'm not overwhelmed or under. I'm just like, okay, I was able to use this card and it did a thing that is roughly equal to how much I paid for it.
That's fair.
So, like, I don't think you're gaining anything significant. It's just that it can remove certain things.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Next up, we have Hellish Sideswipe. Interesting one. So, single black for a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast it, sacrifice an artifact or a creature, and you destroy target creature or vehicle. So it's like a Bone Shards, except if the sacrifice permanent was a vehicle, you draw a card.
Ooh, that's kind of spicy.
But also, how many vehicles... Like, the reason they're giving you this upside is that you probably invested a lot of mana into that vehicle. There are not, like...
Oh, the sacrifice permanent was a vehicle. Oh,
yes.
I thought it was if you killed a vehicle.
No, that would be way better.
Okay, yeah, no. So this is, yeah.
Like, the reason they're giving you that upside is mainly because, like, it would be really bad if you had to sacrifice a vehicle normally.
That makes so much more sense.
There are not many cheap cantripping vehicles.
Yeah, no.
So...
No, yeah, that makes a lot more sense. Oh, this is a quite nice 1-2 on, like, turn 6 with the Aetherdrift vehicle.
That's true, yeah.
Anyway.
That being said, like, Bone Splinters is a fine card in Limited a lot of the time, especially if a black deck has, like, particular creatures that it's fine sacrificing, like the 2-mana 2/2 that you can get back for free.
Notably, a lot of the Bone Splitters we've seen there recently have had a mana buyout, and this one does not.
Yes, you must sacrifice something.
So,
and there can be games where that's hella awkward.
Yeah, so I think this card, like, is going to be quite narrow as a result, where, like, I don't think all black decks are going to have just things to sacrifice lying around.
I agree.
Some of them will, and it'll be quite good in some of those. Like, it may be this ends up being a Final Vengeance kind of situation, like from Duskmourn, where there's just always enough incidental stuff. But I think you need that incidental stuff.
1 mana removal can be really, really valuable. So if there are ways to create pieces of cardboard that you don't mind sacrificing in this format, and there are probably some, there usually are in most modern Limited formats, this card could be quite valuable to certain decks. In the draft, that might mean that if you're confident you can get one of those decks, you prioritize it highly. I could see this going as high up as, like, a 3 in, like, the most friendly formats for it, like Final Vengeance and Duskmourn. But I think most of the time I'm going to put this at, like, a 6. And it'll be highly contextual depending on the deck you're drafting, whether you want to draft it more like a 4 or more like an 8.
Yeah, I could go as low. I could see this going as low as a 10, depending on context.
Yes.
I doubt with the number of, like, we already saw, like, Grizzly Bobble is great with it. I would say, like, the Moldrifter vehicle is pretty damn good with it, even though it's a 5-drop. And, like, you have enough stuff like that throughout your card that you're happy to, like, put in with Hellish Sideswipe. I think I'd want to start at like a 7.
Yeah.
Taking it below like premium commons and like close to premium commons.
That's fair. I do see this as just a high upside card, and I like high upside cards in draft, and I prioritize them early.
That's fair. It destroys a creature or vehicle.
So I think like mid pack, I'm taking this over a card that is like a lot more medium impact and less like high upside, high downside. So I think I'm putting it at a 6 for me.
Yeah, I think for me it's between a 6 and a 7.
Fair enough.
By that definition. Intimidation Tactics. Single black for a sorcery. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose an artifact or creature from it. Exile that card. Cycling 3. I don't love it. Cycling
I also don't
3
love it.
is quite high, and this is quite a situational effect. Like, I think I'm quite low on it. I think Cycling 3 is not enough of a buyout for this super situational effect. And there's also going to be times, like, pretty rare with the nature of this format, but there are going to be times when you cast this card, your opponent has like 2 cards in hand, and you whiff.
Yes.
And you didn't really have a choice. You didn't really have the space to.
You can't cycle it then. Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's just like it has a high enough fail chance, plus being like awkward to deploy if your opponent has no cards in hand, but you're not like super late game yet.
I will say, this is a pretty sweet sideboard card if your opponent has bombs. Like, it's really nice to have access to.
This is true. It's a lot better if you know the texture of your opponent's deck is weak to it.
And never terrible, I would say, as a main deck card, just because of the cycling. It takes away the, like, worst case late game scenario where they just don't have cards and this is a complete blank top deck.
That's true.
I think because I value it pretty highly as a sideboard card, I'm drafting this at around the level of, like, average commons. So I would put it at like a 7 or an 8, but it's worse than that generically. I'm just kind of valuing the upside a little bit.
I think I'm sure with that. Yeah.
All right. I would actually go as far as to say 7 for this.
I don't think I'd go that far, but
yeah.
Maybe I'll change over the course of the format.
7.5 for Mora, 7 for me.
No, 8 for me. Don't misrepresent me.
Fair enough. Oh, I thought you said you were okay with 7 or 8.
Oh, I thought you said 8 or 9.
No, I said 7 or 8.
I think solidly 8 is where I like.
Okay, Mora's an 8, I'm a 7. Wretched Doll. 1 in a black for an artifact creature toy. It's a 3/1, and you can pay a black and tap it to surveil 1. Really, really medium rate here.
Yeah.
Like, I'm disappointed in this. Like, black tap? Why isn't it just tap? And yeah, I'm not a huge fan of this card.
This card's...
It's a X1.
There's so many other ways to spend your mana.
It's an artifact, which is a little bit nice, but there's so many other ways to spend your mana.
The body is...
Yeah, I think I'm at like a 9 on this. Like, it's a playable 2-drop. It'll do things. Surveilling is nice if you get into a stalled board. It's really nice. But, like, I don't want to be playing 2 mana 3/1s with marginal upside in my deck most of the time.
Yeah, I think I'm like closer to an 8 on it just because it is a 2-drop, that is an artifact, and it has that little bit of upside. But, like, meh.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
It gets a point up for being a 2-drop that I'm like a 2-drop that trades up nicely enough with some other upside. But like, yeah.
Yep, I think
Not
8 is fair. Like, 2-drops are good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Momentum Breaker.
Momentum Breaker is 1 in a black enchantment. Start your engines. When this enchantment enters, each opponent sacrifices a creature or vehicle of their choice. Each opponent who cannot discards a card. Then you have 2 mana, sacrifice this enchantment, gain life equal to your speed. Well, I like this card.
Oh yeah, this card is sweet. I mean, definitely a standard banger with the Pixie decks, but
Like,
in limited, it's still quite good.
Like, this is a card where you don't actually care almost at all about the fact that it's doing speed stuff, besides the fact that it's starting your speed incidentally. It really is just like, it's 2 mana, edict to your opponent, and then you can cash it in later for some life gain if you need. It is worth noting that I think sacrifice a creature or vehicle is probably worse than sacrifice a creature.
Yeah, I think so, although, well, yeah, because it strictly gives them options.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, it is worse than if it just said sacrifice a creature, because...
I guess what I'm saying is I feel like vehicles seem to more often have, like, incidental upsides that may make, like, just edicting one of them easier for your opponent, but maybe that's not true.
Yeah, I mean, this will always get a piece of cardboard, so I think the fact that it says or vehicle is actually kind of downside. Yeah. But still, it's like a really good rate card.
Yeah, and also, like, if they don't, there will be some spots where, like, they have, like, it's like late game, both boards are empty, and they have, like, a card in hand. You're like, yeah, got you, and you get their removal spell.
Yeah.
And then you get to deploy your threat. Like,
and starting your engines is super nice, too.
Yeah.
Gaining life equal to your speed. Like, it's just basically you get a free food when you cast this as well.
This card just is like an edict with a bunch of different, very minor upsides baked in. And that's pretty good.
Right, like, an edict on its own in Limited is not that good because it usually nabs a creature that is, like, extremely not impactful on the board. It can have really high upside, but this just has enough incremental upsides that even if it's only getting a creature that's, like, pretty bad, it's still going to add up to being worth your 2 mana almost every time.
Yeah, I mean, the major exception to that, though, is, like, I'm sad that there's a bunch of, like, Thopter tokens and stuff running around.
Yeah, but even if this just gets a Thopter token and then sacks to gain 3 later, like, yes, your card was not good, but it wasn't unplayably awful.
Yes, agreed.
So I would put this at probably, like, a 5. Like, I don't think it's as good as premium removal, but it's a really solid card, and especially in, like, start your engines decks, like speed decks, you're going to want this just because you're going to want a count of things that start engines.
Yeah, I think I'm between 5 and 6. I think, yeah, the starting engines point kind of pushes it over for me a bit. We'll see, though, how well edicts actually line up into this format.
Yeah. Next up, we have Gastel Raider. 2 and a black for a 2/1 that starts your engines. And when it enters, target opponent reveals their hand. You choose an instant or sorcery card from it, and they discard that card. And then it has max speed, +1/+1, and menace.
Huh.
Pretty sweet. This is a Sin Collector, for people who remember that card. Yeah. Sin Collectors are good. They don't always get a card in Limited, just because your opponent will not always have an instant or sorcery. And if you're playing this on curve, you're not going to, like, delay it for a time when they might have one. But sometimes being a 2-for-1, other times being a 3-mana 2/1 that starts your engines and then becomes a 3/2 with menace, like, that's definitely not worth a card, or, like, not on rate. But I think this is probably on net, like, worth what it's doing in a pretty actively good way.
I agree, and also, like, your worst case scenario of just looking at their hand and seeing they don't have instant or sorceries.
That also is
It's,
relevant,
like,
yeah. Looking at their hand
bad.
is a real upside.
Yeah.
It's a good point.
Like, I think it all adds up, like, to being worth a card and, like, worth playing on net.
Yep.
Like, it's another card that's, like, sometimes you won't get a card and you'll feel pretty bad, but, like, the times you do get a card are worth that, and almost all decks on average will have cards you could get. Instant or sorceries.
You probably get a card with this, like, 60% of the time or something.
And I think that 60% of the time is high impact enough to be game changing enough to be worth it. Because also, like, instant or sorceries are cards your opponent's usually going to hold on returns. It's not like it's grabbing like a specific kind of creature or something that they're going to deploy it as soon as they can.
Yeah,
like
I like this card.
I like this card a lot.
I'd say like a 5 for it.
Yeah, I'd say 5 is pretty comfy.
It's good. I think it's better than a lot of commons.
Yeah, could even be a 4, but I think it's probably a 5. Calaxion, Hunger Tyrant. 1 black, legendary creature, crocodile. 7 power, 2 toughness, no other abilities.
Fascinating.
I think it's bad.
I agree.
But I don't know how bad.
I think it's probably bad. 2 toughness is just really rough. There might be some combos with it in the set, like if there's a fling or something that's kind of nice. I don't think there is, though.
Or if there's a way to, like, give it +1/+1 lifelink and make a pilot.
Okay, that's a combo. I'll grant that. I mean, they might just have a 3 power creature on box.
No, it's a card that if you're putting into combat, you're expecting it to trade off immediately.
I would treat this similar to a creature that connects and draws a card. In that they really can't let this connect if they don't want you to get like significant value. This is basically like a 3-mana 3/2 that when it hits them, drains them for 4. Like, it's sort of like that, and it's obviously a little bit better because it can trade up for creatures with large toughnesses. But I would think of it very similarly to that, where like it threatens good attacks, and so it might make them keep back creatures on blocks in case you have removal. But the value it gains from that is going to be offset by the fact that it's a 3-drop that doesn't really do anything proactive or like to push forward a game plan, and it will often just trade for a 2-drop.
If you think about it, this card is kind of like if you removed the recursive ability from Unstoppable Slasher. It's a 3-mana like
and
2/2
gave it -1 toughness.
Oh yeah, it's like a 3-mana 2/2 Death Touch.
Yeah.
That also has a
that
has
also
a hit
connects
ability.
and drains them a lot, so
Yes.
it's not exactly like that at all. But
But
I get what you were going
yeah.
for.
Like, I think this card deceptively is very fine defensively.
Yes.
But not, like,
Do you think
great.
this is more of a defensive card than an aggressive card?
It depends on how good Black's tools are for forcing through damage, which we haven't really seen that many good tools.
I think
For
I agree. I
47
think this
power?
is a better defensive card.
It also depends on like how you want to be defending when you're being defensive. Like, do you want a big thing to just trade off with your thing, or are you more looking for like?
It also doesn't just trade off, but it sort of disincentivizes attacks in, I think, an
Yeah.
important way.
For sure.
Anyway, I think pretty mediocre. Like, I'd put
Yeah.
this at a 9,
Yeah.
maybe.
Double Black is also pretty rough, actually.
Yeah,
on
that's
your
pretty
3-drop,
rough.
and it doesn't really reward you that much.
Maybe
for
it's a 10, but it's like a playable 10.
I think I'd put it at like a 9. I
Yeah.
think, but it's like around that range of 9 to 10.
Next up, we have Carrion Cruiser. 2 and a black for a 3/2 vehicle with crew 1. When it enters, mill 2 cards, then return a creature or vehicle card from your graveyard to your hand.
Oh,
Pretty nice. This is just kind of a straight up grave digging vehicle.
Yeah, and it also like digs you towards things as well.
It does,
Although
yeah.
you probably don't want to just like play it in an empty graveyard, but you could.
And 3 mana is pretty solid for this kind of
Yeah,
effect.
no, it's pretty efficient.
I think this is like an actively good card.
I agree.
I would put it at a 4.
I think 4 is the lowest I would go. And I think it's kind of where I'm at too.
Yeah. I don't think it gets to a 3. I just think that like
I agree.
it doesn't have a high enough board impact for me to be like super happy about it. It is not a creature on its own. If it were a 3-mana 3/2 that did this, then I would be much happier. That said, it's like not that far from that. So.
And I like it with the bone splinters.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Like 3-mana vehicle, like any like vehicles that give me some value and like are fine vehicles, but also like aren't too expensive. Like with that.
That package is nice, but it's also like 4 mana and 2 cards for a grave dig and a destroy a creature.
And draw a card.
Oh, that's true. And draw.
Like that's what I'm saying is like these
right,
vehicles with
the
incidental
vehicles.
effects when you're also cantripping off of them and killing something.
Okay, that's
like,
a good point.
That is like you're making actual bank there.
Okay, yeah, I like this at a 4. I could even see it maybe being a 3, like you were saying.
I think it's probably a 4. I think it's not doing quite enough, but yeah.
Yep.
Hour of Victory. 2 and a black for an enchantment. Start your engines. When this enchantment enters, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. So baseline we have 2 and a black enchantment. Make a 2/2 zombie. Don't love that. What else does it do? What's it doing with speed? At max speed, 1 and a black. Sacrifice this enchantment. Search your library for a card, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Activate only as a sorcery. So if you're at maximum speed, you can spend.
Have a demonic tutor in your hand.
Yes, except you don't really have a demonic tutor because you spent 3 mana on a 2/2 first.
Well, yes, I'm just saying the effect, the reward you get is you have
Yes.
the card demonic tutor.
Yes. I don't love this card. I think demonic tutor as a card has fallen off, and I think a 3 mana 2/2 is a pretty awful rate.
I agree. I think this is not ultimately that worth it, but I will say, I think I'm playing this if I have a really good bomb. I think 3 mana
Maybe?
2/2 that eventually just tutors for that bomb, and I do think in most games you will be able to achieve max speed, like in a reasonably grindy game, it will just sort of happen for both players at some point. That's my suspicion. And even if you don't have your bomber, if you already drew it and it got killed or something, this does just tutor for the best card in your deck. That's meaningful upside. The rate to start is quite poor.
And I think also notably, the rate, just creating a 2/2 black zombie is pretty, on 3 is pretty awful for the game plan of building speed. It's not pushing anything through or giving you something that you can push through.
I agree, yeah.
And
I guess I'm just saying that I actually do think the upside on this one is quite real. It's a 3-mana 2/2 that draws a card very slowly.
Yeah, but it's a 3-mana 2/2 that draws a card that can then draw your best card for an additional extra 2 mana.
Right.
It's just it feels like a lot of mana to invest in this in a mana intensive format where there's just,
this is fair. Where are you thinking of putting it?
I think I'm between a 9 and a 10.
Okay. I was gonna say 8, but I can be convinced to 9.
I'm not. I also contest. I think especially if you're playing a card like this that is bad at building speed, there are going to be games where the game is going to stall out without you hitting 4 speed. Maybe you hit 2 or even 3, but I think there's making your opponent lose life 3 separate times. Not always is going to happen.
That's true. Okay, I'm convinced.
I think I'm pretty.
I think I will say
here,
I'm gonna put it at a 9 because I do genuinely think that if I'm a deck that is reasonably good at doing speed, and I have a really good bomb, I think I'm just happy to play this.
See, I agree, but I also think you'll never need to prioritize it.
Yes, that is very true.
That's part
but
of
I think a 9 mostly is a card that you don't have to prioritize.
Mostly, yeah.
It's just a card that you might...
I expect this to go 14th a lot, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Or 13th. Or 12th. Around there.
Next up, we have Wickerfolk Indomitable. 3 and a black for a 4/3 artifact creature scarecrow. You may cast this card from your graveyard by paying 2 life and sacrificing an artifact or creature in addition to paying its other costs. So basically you have to pay 3 and a black and pay 2 life and sacrifice an artifact or creature to recast this from your yard.
Yeah, and baseline it's a 4-mana 4/3. 4-mana 4/3 on rate. Pretty mediocre. Not something I'm excited about. It trades into all these 3/4s that we've been seeing, but we've also seen some 3/5s which just blank this card entirely. And we haven't seen that many we've seen maybe 1 or 2 X4s this can trade into. But it's, if you have a lot of incidental stuff to sacrifice and you just want this recursive card this card, I think becomes playable. But I think it is pretty high cost to recur it, so it's not just something that you're getting nice incidental value out of. And 2 life is also a pretty real cost if you're behind.
Yeah,
I think this card's just kind of a bit too clunky for what it's doing.
I agree. It's really, really expensive to cast it from your graveyard. 4 mana, 2 life, and sack something? That's just so much. And it's nice to have the option, but I think it's going to be really, really rare that you want to use the option.
I agree.
I'm pretty low on this. I'd put it at a 9.
I think I'm comfy with 9 as well, yeah.
Yeah, it's fine. I don't think it's a 10, but it's not good.
Yeah, it's approaching 10 for me, but I think it does just enough to not be there. Ancient Vendetta. 3 and a black. Sorcery. Choose a card name. Search target opponent's graveyard, hand, and library for up to 4 cards with that name, and exile them. Then that player shuffles.
15.
That's too hot. That's too low of a number, I think.
This is an unplayable limited card. I think everyone should know that. Don't play it even if your opponent has a ridiculous bomb. 4 mana to remove the bomb from their deck, even if it wasn't in their hand, is just literally never worth it. Do not play this card.
Yeah, if you're but my deck is so much better than theirs, this is the only card I can lose to.
Okay.
Suddenly you put...
Hold on. Joe did just point out you can choose lands.
But you can only take 4 of them. I was aware of this.
True.
I was thinking about, what if I took basic lands? I could see this as a sideboard card, maybe, if you're denying them lands they can search for, but even then they can just grab them first, or they have like dual
Yeah.
lands. I don't think.
No, this is pretty stinky.
I
even
think
if
this
you're doing
card,
that.
if you're playing it under the theory of, I'm going to get rid of my opponent, of certain cards for my opponent that I can't beat because my deck's better, putting this card in your deck made your deck a lot worse, and spending your turn on that made you a lot worse. Like limited deck, the differential between limited decks are never that big.
You
And
are
this is
essentially
4
doing
mana.
this to yourself for 0 mana already, to then maybe have the opportunity to do it to your opponent for 4 mana.
Yeah, and it's like,
Which is the argument Mora just made, and I think it's a really good one. We've spent too much time on this card already.
Yeah.
It's actually completely unplayable.
yeah, worst
Don't
card in
play
the
it.
set we've seen so far.
Yeah, it's easily a 10 just because that's how high our grading scale goes.
Yes.
Risen Necro Regent. 4 and a black for a 5/4 with Start Your Engines, and at max speed, at the beginning of your end step, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token.
Now that's a spicy payoff.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
it
a 5
is,
drop,
but
but
it's a
like-
5 mana 5/4
Yeah.
blank, like vanilla otherwise.
This is a card that I want to be playing when I'm at max speed. I want to be playing in a deck that is trying to get max speed consistently, like over the
Yes.
course of the early to mid turns of the game.
I would even say, like, even if you're really consistently getting max speed, this is merely good. It's not great.
I agree. I think it's like pretty slow. What it does is it's like no Grave Titan in its speed, but it is like, if you can like build up speed, your opponent's interacting with you, and you're both at low resource, and then slam this, like you're gonna be amassing a nice board presence as the game gets grindy.
Yes, I do think that, like, 5 mana 5/4 vanilla is a really bad
Yes,
downside.
but
Put
it's
this
also
at-
not unplayable.
It's not unplayable, yeah, and you will get to max speed at some reasonable pace in a lot of these black-red decks. I would put this at like an 8, maybe even a 9.
I want to give it an optimistic 7, but I could easily see myself going lower.
It's a 5-drop.
Yeah, but it's a 5
And the
drop.
upside is not huge.
But it's also like, notably upside you don't have to pay mana for, and so many other things that you do like game of this format you pay mana for.
Yeah, okay.
I could see I'm
giving it an 8.
I'm guessing I'll probably end up around an 8 or a 9, but like I'm a little bit hopeful to start.
Fair enough.
Back on track. 4 and a black for a sorcery. Return target creature or vehicle card from your graveyard to the battlefield to create a 1/1 colorless pilot creature token that crews things with power as if it had 2 higher power. So 5 mana, return your like 6-drop black green or mono white vehicle to the battlefield and get a pilot to crew it.
So the issue is you're spending 5 mana, and the realistic things that you can cheat in this limited format cost 6 mana.
Yeah,
You're not really getting a big discount. You're getting a pilot, great. That's valuable. But that's like the best case scenario.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best case scenario for this card is it is a card that will, if you have like 3 or more bombs in your deck that are creature/vehicles, it gives you redundancy on them.
Yes, I think that's the best case scenario. I agree.
You want this, like, most limited decks I think just will not want this card. It just doesn't do it. It's like a lot of the time your only hits will be like 4 drops or whatever random thing you cycled. But there are going to be decks where like you have a combination of bombs and cycling threats that like it becomes worth playing as like your curve topper.
Yeah, like the pilot does matter. It's upside that's relevant that somewhat accounts for the fact that this costs 5. Like I'm evaluating this sort of as like a Zombify level rate, just because making a pilot is sort of equivalent to spending an extra mana.
Yeah.
That being said, I'm usually not playing Zombifies in my limited decks.
Yeah.
But sometimes I do.
And I'm not prioritizing it unless like as a pack through and I already have the cards that I want with it.
Right. So I would give this probably a 9.
Yeah, I think in terms of where I'm prioritizing it, it's a 9. Like it'll sometimes rise a little bit higher, but.
Yep. Next we've got Sheffet Archfiend.
This is a
5 black for a 5/5 flying demon. When it enters, all other creatures get -2/-2 until end of turn, and it has cycling for 2.
This card is neat, and I think has a chance of being quite good. So 7 mana, 5/5 flyer. Obviously not a super efficient body. 7 drops are like a 7-drop is a card you're expecting to be able to cast on like turn 9, turn 10 or something whenever you hit your 7th land drop, maybe even later.
And before then, it's doing nothing.
Before it's doing nothing, although it is cycling.
Yes.
And so that's like, alright, I want my 7-drop to be winning me the game. This card will definitely win some games.
Yeah.
Like,
this card wins a lot of games the turn it comes down.
Yeah, like sometimes it'll just like eat up all your opponent's X2s. You could like try to trade your X2s off or just like build your deck to complement this card more. So that's nice. It's expensive, so like it's nothing. Just a 7-drop is something I'd prioritize, but it is powerful, and like some controlling decks that can get up to that point in the game consistently will love it. Cycling 2 on this card is very high impact because it enables.
This is actually a good reanimation target.
This is like probably one of the best things to cycle and reanimate, if not the best, because it actually really recoups you for the opportunity cost of setting it up.
Yes.
Like playing it on 4 mana or 5 mana. You can even play this with a 4 mana artifact if you have enough of the 4 mana artifact reanimator. Oh wait, no, that only hits artifacts, right?
The black green one.
No, the 4 mana white.
A 3 and a white, yes. That only hits.
Okay, so that doesn't work with this. It's just, you were doing this with the Rise from the Grave, which is worse. It's at 5 mana instead of 4. So you can't like just like splash this in your white decks by that.
But if you have 2 of these, that other card we just reviewed goes up, obviously, from probably like a 9 to maybe like a 6 or a 7.
Yeah. It gives a pretty high upside combo.
Although, it's funny that the pilot just immediately dies.
Yeah, but like, that's fine. You're getting a 5/5 flyer and nuking the board.
Right.
Hopefully.
Yeah, this card's quite good, but I don't think it's premium.
Yeah, I'm like, my first instinct just is to start it at a 6, just to...
I think that's exactly where I would go.
Like, I could see it
high
being
upside,
higher if there's like more
but
things
there's
to come
some
with
decks
it.
that won't play this.
Yeah.
Not many, but I think some.
I think a notable amount. There's going to be a lot of decks that just like never want to pay 7 mana and don't have reanimation spells.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, even a deck that like very rarely wants to pay 7 mana might just play this because it cycles.
Maybe.
Sometimes you just reach 7 mana and it's really good.
That's true.
But like, yeah, this card I think a lot of people are going to be like, oh my god, it's incredible. If it costs 6, it would be premium and incredible. I think because it costs 7, it is definitely less than that. I think it's a 6.
Yeah, comfy with that.
Alright, moving on to red.
Is it me or you next?
I'll go. So this is Dynamite Diver. It is red for a 1/1 Goblin Pilot, so it saddles, mounts, and cruise vehicles as though it's power over 2 or greater. And then when this creature dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. So it's a Goblin Arsonist that's also a pilot, basically. Huh. I don't know exactly what red is doing. This is a way to guarantee speed enabling if you attack with it.
Yeah.
A little bit nice.
Not excited about it though. Like,
not super excited about this, but it seems like a playable 1-drop, which is pretty good.
It depends on like
structurally, I mean.
Yeah, it's a question of like how excited am I about having 1 mana for a pilot. Yeah,
I think red is supposed to be a vehicle-y color. And so like pilots are somewhat valuable. I don't think this is great. I'd put it at like an 8 probably, but I think it's a card you'll end up playing a good amount of the time.
I'm leaning more towards like a 9 or a 10, but like I could see it being a one-player 8.
I just think you often want to spend 1 mana in limited.
Yeah, I think though like also a lot of the vehicles that I'm going to care about in these like vehicle heavy decks are going to have crew 1, and so like needing specifically a pilot might be less often needed.
That's true.
Like we saw like the 2 mana 3/2 in white and the 3 mana 3/3 flying vigilance in white both at crew 1. And so I'd rather play a slightly higher impact 1-drop with other upsides than playing a 1-drop, if those exist.
I will note that there's a card we're going to get to later in red that is 3 and a red for a 6/3 menace with crew 3 that has cycling for 1. This is quite good with that.
Yeah.
I think there might be at least one other card that it works well with, and so I just think like it's probably in red for a reason. We haven't gotten to the rest of the red cards, but I think this is going to be like quite playable. That's my guess.
I could see it, yeah.
Not great though, so 8 or 9, somewhere in there.
Next up we have Pedal to the Metal. X in a red for an instant, a common. Target creature gets +X+O and gains first strike until end of turn.
So this is kind of a split card, like fireball combat trick.
Yeah. As a combat trick, it's kind of poopy. Like red, give a creature first strike, or like 1 in red, 2 in red, +1 or +2 in first strike.
That's underrate, because normally we have Kindled Fury, which is +1/+0 in first strike for a single red, and that card's usually not very good.
Or like Sure Strike for 2 mana +3/+0.
Yeah.
So like that's not great, but also you have flexibility, you have optionality, and then this card can just kill them. However, it does not give trample.
Yes.
So you have to.
You need an unblocked creature.
An unblocked creature and a shit ton of untapped mana, and your opponent to not know what's up.
Yes, this is a common. Interestingly, I was kind of expecting it to be an uncommon, because X spells are usually uncommon.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this card is flexible enough that I'm not super low on it, just because it'll often win a combat for a single red sometimes. Like, that'll come up often enough that it's gonna have a baseline that isn't terrible, and the upside of just being able to tap all your mana and kill your opponent if you get an unblocked creature in is quite relevant.
Yeah.
And then it also does just say, like, spend all your mana for a turn and trade up to kill whatever is their really most important creature on the board if they get it in combat. So, like, it's usually quite inefficient, but it is quite flexible. I would give this maybe an 8. I think it's, like, not good, you don't need to prioritize it, but you kind of like having the option to put it in your deck sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Board it in or out, depending on, like, the matchup and what you kind of expect the games to shape like.
Yeah.
So
I'm between, like, an 8 and a 9 for similar reasoning.
I think the flexibility, for me, puts it to an 8, but I think that's reasonable.
Yeah.
Next up, Endrider Catalyzer. 1 in a red for a 3/1 human warrior that starts your engines, and then when you're at max speed, it taps to add red.
I don't love it.
Another X1. There's a lot of X1s.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Which, again, I think is why the goblin that pings
that's
actually
true,
might be fine.
Yeah, no, that's very true. And so the thing about this card is, like, tapping to add red once you're at max speed, 3 turns have definitely elapsed, so you're never, like, getting, like, a super early red kind of vibe off this. Like,
and mana is just exponentially more valuable early in the game than it is late
exactly,
in the game.
Yeah. And so, like, if you get this on turn 4, which I think is the earliest possible, you can play a 6-drop. It's pretty good. So could anything like a Made Treasure or anything else like that. Like, it's not that unique in that. And, like, more often than not, especially if your 2 mana plays a 2 mana 3/1, which aren't great at attacking, it's probably not going to be on until like turn 6, turn 7. And, like, at best. And that's not great.
Now, how good is 2 mana 3/1 start your engines? I think it's playable.
I think 2 mana 3/1 is just playable.
I wouldn't even say that in Modern Limited. Like, often it's just not.
That's fair.
But
2 mana 3/1
starting your engines is just again, I think it's a thing you're going to want to have access to, especially on turn 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm. That's fair, yeah.
It's fine. I think this is probably like an 8. I don't think I need to prioritize it at all. I would rather have a deck where I don't need to play it because I have better 2-drops, but I'm never embarrassed to play it, I think
that sounds like a 9 to me. I think you're describing a 9.
Okay, yeah, I'm happy to make it a 9.
Alright, next up we have Gilded Goda. 1 in a red for a 2/2 horse mount. We have a mountain red. Whenever this creature attacks while saddled, create a treasure token, saddle 1.
I like it.
I like it. It's like,
I don't love it.
I don't love it, but, like, it is a nice, like, curve, like 1 drop into this and to attack and hold up a trick or something, get some mana advantage. Like, it's a 2/2's is gonna be not great at attacking into your opponent, but if your opponent's playing a bunch of, like, 3/1s, we've seen a lot of 3/1s. Like, it's pretty good at attacking into that. We've seen like a couple 2/3s, but not that many.
And this is happy to attack into a 1/3.
Yeah, like, it's, if you can get this going early and get, like, 1 treasure out of it or 2, like, that's already, like, pretty nice for your 2-drop.
Yeah, I think if you get 0 treasures out of this, it's pretty underrate. If you get 1, I would say it's, like, on rate. And then if you get 2, you're pretty happy.
Yep, I agree.
So this is, like, a pretty solid common. I think I'm pretty happy to play this a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So 7, 8.
That's where I'm at too. I think 7.5.
All right, 7.5 for Gilded Goda. Next, we've got Prow Catcher Specialist. 1 in a red for a 2/1 with haste, and it has exhaust, 3 in a red, put 2+1/+1 counters on this creature.
Don't love it.
Don't love it, but also don't hate it. Like,
Yeah.
2/1 haste for 1 in a red is not that far behind, right?
And on the play, it'll
just get in for 2.
Get in, yeah.
It doesn't start your engines, so it's only really actively good if you have a 1-drop that starts your engines, which I think there are very few of.
There's one at rare, but I think that's the one I can think of.
Is it possible that there's a mono red deck with those colorless lands that start your engines? Maybe.
If you're lucky.
Yeah.
I don't think this format though has like that much inherent support of monocolor.
I agree. And then for 3 in a red, making it a 4/3 with Threat of Activation, like, that's fine. That's pretty solid.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so, like, this card is fine, but I think it's pretty unexciting. I would give it an 8, probably.
Yeah,
2 drops are good, but, like, this is a pretty
It's a
mediocre
pretty
one.
medium one. 8 sounds comfy. Next up, we have Burner Rocket. 1 in a red for a 3/1 vehicle with flash. When this vehicle enters, target creature you control gets +2/+0 and gains trample until end of turn. Crew 1. This card's art makes it look like it's flying, but it's just not a flying. Also the fact that it's called a rocket. Yeah,
Interesting. So it's a combat trick. This reminds me a lot of Rimrock Knight.
It does, but this one notably you can flash and accrue it, block and trade.
That's true.
Like it reminds me more kind of like Ambush Viper, kind of weirdly. It's like
yeah, I can see that.
Like you can flash it in, accrue something, trade. Like if you have a 1/1 lying around and they're attacking with their 3/3, that's nice. Or if you have 2 1/1s lying around and they attack with their 2 3/3s, you can like get a double trade in there.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it can't pump itself.
That's true.
Which
Trample is nice.
Yeah.
I kind of like Trample. It pushes damage, pretty sweet. I think this card is like an actively fine 2-drop. I keep using the word actively. I need to stop doing that. But like, I think this card is a 2-drop you're very fine playing.
I mean, I don't know if I want to think about it exactly like a 2-drop because I don't know.
More of a combat trick than a 2-drop.
Because I don't know how often I want to play it onto.
Yeah, for sure. I guess, yes, it's not a 2-drop in that sense.
Yeah, like I don't want to evaluate it like I'm evaluating like the turn 2 play 2-drops.
It is really a great double spelling card, which I think puts it more into the combat trick category.
I think it's a combat trick / like luminous rebuke kind of vibe card.
Well, I actually think it's more about pushing damage than it is about ambushing things.
I think what's nice about it is it can do either.
I agree, but I think it's an aggressive card more than it is a defensive card.
That's true. It is kind of like 2 mana. You're going to build up speed this turn.
Right, exactly. So, I think this is pretty good, but not great. I would put it at an 8.
Another
just because that rhymes.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Yeah. Alright, we've got Kickoff Celebrations. 1 in a red. For an enchantment, it starts your engines, and when it enters, you can discard a card if you do draw 2 cards, so classic 1 in a red effect. And then at max speed, you can sacrifice it to give creatures and vehicles you control haste until end of turn.
So it's kind of like Bitter Reunion, but max speed instead of 1 mana. I do not like this card.
Yeah, like, this effect is sometimes valuable and limited if you're just a deck that doesn't have a lot of card filtering and are worried about flooding out. But I don't think this is totally going to be the format for that, because you have cycling already, which sort of does the same thing as
You're
this.
cycling, you have lots of ways to use your mana, and yeah, just like better ways to enable you to discard synergies. Like
if you really want to start your engines on turn 2, like maybe...
But also it's not board presence, so like
right.
Do you really care that you started your engines if you're like not actually advancing that game plan well?
Yeah. No, I think this is pretty stinky. I'd put it at like a 9.
I think, yeah, I'd put it
It's not that bad of a Magic the Gathering card, but like... It's, I think, pretty bad in this
format. I'd put it at a 10. I think you will sometimes be able to play it and want to play it, but I don't think you'll ever need to prioritize it.
Yeah, I mean, there is a discard deck in red.
Yeah, But there's better ways to much better ways to enable it. I could see a 9 just for discard synergies, but even then I feel like there's better ways to do that. Like you can just take random cycling cards and be about as happy.
Alright, we're settling on 9.5, I think.
Yes. Lightning Strike, 1 in red, deal 3 damage to any target. We've never seen this card before. This card's great.
Yeah, card's great. Really good and limited. I don't think like premium, but like
a 4.
really good. Like I think a 4 is exactly where I put it.
Like it's just it's like pretty efficient instant speed interaction that sometimes kills them.
Yep. You might be first picking this card a decent amount of the time in weak packs, but like I think ideally you want to be picking it around pick 4.
Yeah, I could see it being a 3. I think it's more complicated.
Kind of depends on the format.
Yeah.
I think starting at 3.5 I think
also,
is good.
It's common? Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, that common. Okay, we have Gastel Blockbuster. 2 in a red for a 3/2 human berserker. When it enters, you may sacrifice a creature or vehicle. When you do, destroy target artifact and opponent controls. And notably, this can sacrifice itself. So it could just be a 3-mana shatter.
Yeah, I mean,
That's some good optionality to have.
I don't have a good pulse on how good Shatter is in this format, but my instinct is definitively better than usual, which is, I think, pretty obvious, but with all the vehicles and other artifacts running around. But, like, I am, like, pretty actively interested in this. I think, like, the upside is quite there.
The downside is that it's just a 3-mana 3/2.
Yeah, but if you have things that you... Like, the floor is obviously 3-mana 3/2, not great. But if you expect to need to shatter enough, / have things you're happy sacrificing, like, for example, if you have, like, the 1-drop, you sacrifice it, shatter something, kill something else with 1
That's pretty good, yeah.
And I think that is not going to be that uncommon. There's a lot of 3/1s.
Yeah, I think I'm more confident in my read that the 1-drop's going to be pretty good now.
Yeah.
Especially with this kind of synergy. But yeah, I would put this at a 7. It's like pretty nice to have, but I also don't think the body is that exciting.
Yeah, I think 7's like I'm happy to start with, and like I could see myself going a lot higher on it if like killing artifacts is premium.
I don't think I could go a lot higher. I mean, 3-mana removal is never like that good. You're thinking of it more as a Necrotal?
I'm saying if the specific confluence of Shatter being premium and Sacrifice Fodder being easy enough to come by and actually wanting to play.
Yeah.
If those two things come together, this card becomes like, if you remember the black-white 3/2 that killed something.
That
was printed recently.
Yeah, this is a pretty far cry from that card.
Yeah.
But it's not that far, so I see what you're saying.
Yeah, like...
I'm interested.
I think I'm happy chilling at a 7 for now, but I can see myself going a little bit higher or a little bit lower.
Yep. Goblin Surveyor.
This is 2 in a red for a 3/2. Deja Vu. Goblin Scout with Trample. Start your engines. Max speed, exile this card from your graveyard, draw a card.
For 3 mana.
Yeah. For 3, yeah, that's important. This is part of that cycle. So 3 mana, 3/2 Trample. It's like...
I like Trample.
Pretty good at building speed exactly once. Which I kind of like, yeah.
And I mean, you don't need to build speed that many times, so I think a card that builds speed once or if twice if you start your engines with it, that's like enough speed to get out of a card, and if it trades for another card, like I'm pretty happy with what I've gotten out of this.
No, I agree. Like I like this card as a role player.
I agree.
I don't think it's like a premium common, but I do think it's just like very, very solid.
I'd say it's a 7.
Yeah, I think like I was gonna say 6.9 unironically.
Yeah, I think this is like one of the better commons. I think you'll be happy to play this most of the time.
Yes.
Magmakin Artillerist. 2 in a red for, it's not a 3/2 this time, it's a 1/4. Whenever you discard 1 or more cards, this creature deals that much damage to each opponent.
Oh.
And it has cycling for 1 in a red, and when you cycle it, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. So it like does its thing on the cycle, basically. Interesting.
Like it has a nice
build around, I would say.
Yeah, it has a nice defensive body. I guess the question is like, how much damage do you want to deal with this card for it to feel worth it?
I would like to deal at least 4 damage with this.
I think that's reasonable if you build around it.
Yes. But I think you do need to build around it. I don't think I'm playing a 3-mana 1/4, although does do speed somewhat well.
That's true. Like this 2 mana increment speed draw card basically.
So this is really the intersection of red's interests. Like it's discard and it's speed.
Yeah.
I think this card's gonna be no. I guess like the cycling is also just a good way to build speed too. So
No, that's what I meant. Yeah.
yeah,
It's like you can just play it primarily as I'm gonna play this cycle this on turn 4 to get to like close to max speed.
yeah. No, like that spell, 1 in a red, deal 1 damage to each opponent, draw a card. Not that good. Like if it existed in this format, even with max speed, I still don't think it would be super duper great. It might not even be playable. It probably would be playable, but like barely. It's really nice to have a 3-mana 1/4 that can like ping them repeatedly over the course of a game as like
And
a different option.
Also lines up quite well into the many 3/1s we've seen.
Yeah. So I think this card is pretty good. I would also, again, go with like a 7 for it. I think it's like a pretty actively good common. It's just pretty synergistic with a lot of the stuff going on.
Yeah, but I'm not trying to like prioritize it to build around it. It's more like it's not a build around it that I am taking this and building around it. It's I am in the synergy space and so picking this card up.
Yes.
And so that's why it's later in the pack versus like the blue flyer discard payoff, which I'm playing in every blue deck.
I'm giving it a bit of a synergy upside grade for a 7. Like, generically, and just an average, not super focused deck, this is not that good.
Oh yeah, no, this is not a card you want to play unless you have synergies with it.
You want to be either
Like
really
full stop.
focused on max speed or really focused on discard.
Yeah, agreed. Clamorous Ironclad. Any Slay the Spire fans in chat? This is 3 in a red for a 6/3 vehicle with Menace, Crew 3, cycling for a red mana. This is the card you're talking about before. So 6/3 Menace vehicle is like kind
6/3
of
menace
appealing.
is a lot.
It's really hard to double block that effectively in a way where you actually are profiting. Because, like, you throw 2 2/2s in front of it and, like, yeah, sure, you're already getting, like, it's already basically functioning as a 6/4 there.
Crew 3 is a lot,
Crew 3 is a lot. Pilots crew it, though.
but cycling for a single red is not a lot.
Yes. Quite cheap, one might even say.
I kind of like this card, and by like, I mean think it might be playable.
I think it also might be playable. What a coincidence. It also has a shark on it.
I'm never super excited about this, but I'm also, like, pretty okay just kind of putting it in a deck and not super worrying if it's deeply incorrect to be putting in that deck, because cycling for a single red is a nice buyout.
Yeah.
I would probably give this an 8.
I think that's why I'm taking it, too. I don't think I'm prioritizing this card almost at all, but, like...
If we have specific synergies, like, I don't know, it's kind of hard to think about, but like maybe discard synergies or lots of pilots in a deck, or like maybe the 3/1 for red and white that makes pilots, and it's good just like with vehicles because you want to play a certain vehicle count with that card. This gets better, but I think beyond that, it's generically not great. Like, I don't want to play it in a deck that doesn't have synergies with it, I would say.
Yeah, and also, like, if you don't have that many synergies with it, keep track of the number of, like, actual, like, 3-power creatures that you have.
Yeah.
Because, like, sometimes you will have more than you think, and sometimes you'll less than you think.
Right. I don't think it's embarrassing to play in a deck with 0 synergies. I just think it's, like, not something I actively want to play in that deck.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think 8 is fair.
Sure. Let's move on.
Crash.
and Burn. I think it's you.
Yeah. Crash and Burn. 3 in a red for an instant. You can choose one, destroy a vehicle, or deal 6 damage to target creature or planeswalker.
This is 4 mana, not 5.
Yeah.
It
This
reads
is
like a 5 mana card.
This is like red's slightly clunky removal spell. And I do think it's still slightly clunky. I think 4 mana is a lot to pay for just a destroy effect in limited. But this is
So
basically
much
just a
less than
straight
5.
up destroy effect.
I feel like every time we see this kind of effect, it costs 5 mana as a sorcery.
Yes, but it also usually has a little bit of upside. And I think that, like, those cards are also usually quite bad.
Yes.
And I think this just rises to the level of being fine.
I think this is... I like this about as much as I like the blue interactive spell that puts something on top or bottom.
I agree. I think this is maybe slightly worse because blue wants interaction a little bit more and is willing to pay a little bit more for it, whereas red will be able to interact in cheaper ways a lot of the time, and
That's fair.
the clunky effects are not quite as good, and it also obviously just does not have cycling.
But also I think red sometimes interaction struggles to get up to the number 6 toughness.
Yeah, and this
And
very
four
much
mana
allows
is
red
nice.
to sort of interact on an axis that it usually is not great at.
Yeah.
So this card's pretty good. I would say it's like a 5 or a 6, probably a 6.
I think I like it about as much as I like Murder.
Yes. So
Which is
I
a
would say
6.
like a 6.
Yeah. I like it.
Fine, really like on rate red removal.
Yep. Next up we have Thunderhead Gunner.
This is a banger.
This is 4 and a red for a Shark Pirate. It's a 4/5 with reach. It has the ability, discard a card, draw a card, activate only as a sorcery, and only once each turn.
Free
no mana
rummaging.
cost. You just get to your 5 and a 4/5 with reach, which stabilizes your board against flyers and non-flyers alike. Also will just trigger your discard synergies every turn. The turn it comes into play for free.
And filter your draws.
Yeah.
Like, get rid of excess lands in your hand
Yeah,
for
like-
free.
Curve out on 5, you never have to play another land again. This card is... Oh, only as a sorcery. For a second I think I could do it each turn cycle. Yeah, no, this card is just very solid.
Very, very solid. This is, I think, what you want out of a common 5-drop in Limited, which is gets you a small amount of incremental value when it comes down, quite a good blocker, and will kind of take over a small game that doesn't involve bombs.
Yes.
Um,
And also dig you to your bombs.
Yes, that too. I like this card a lot. That being said, it is a common 5-drop in Limited, so it can't be that good, but it's basically as good as one of those cards can be.
Yeah.
I'd give it
7?
a 7. I was thinking about 6, but I don't think I can go there.
I don't think so. Like, I think also, because it's a 5-drop, it's like, yeah, this is better than the other 5-drops, but, like, you can pick up a 5-drop and the differential is not that high.
Yeah.
Like, it is notably better than any other common 5-drop you can run into, but, like, there are other ones that are good enough,
Yeah.
and, like, it's better to prioritize cheaper cards.
I agree. I
Because
think
those
this
are
is
what
a
you want
7.
density of.
Yep. And that's a lot to say for a common 5-drop creature that just
Yes.
has, like, 2 abilities that aren't incredibly board impacting, so we like this card. Grease Wrench Goblin. Single red for a 2/1 Goblin Artificer, and it has an exhaust ability, 2 and a red, discard up to 2 cards, and then draw that many cards, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature.
I like it.
I like it, yeah.
It's like it's a good intersection between your exhaust kind of synergy space and your discard synergy space.
Yeah, and it's
And
also
it's
like...
a 1-drop for building speed.
Right. It doesn't build speed on its own, but like having a little bit of a wide board by the time you start your engines is nice to just get in an attack that will build your speed, even if you're trading stuff off.
And notably though, like a 1-mana 2/1 is not that much better than a 2-mana 2/1.
Yes.
Like especially in 2 colors, getting the right color on turn 1 not always easy.
It is nice that it's not free for them to just block this with a 1 toughness creature because of the threat of activation.
This is very true.
So I like it. I think it's like costed in just the right ways to be like better than a red 2/1 because it accounts for those downsides in a good way.
For sure.
Where like the downside of that card is that it means that you're less likely to have action later in the game because you're playing a low impact card, and this accounts for that.
Mitigates that, yeah.
Right. And
Like-
another downside is just the 1 toughness, but this also accounts for that a little bit.
Yeah, late game 4-mana 3/2, discard 2 cards, draw 2 cards. I like that card.
Yes. So I think this card is pretty nice. I would say it is a 6.5, 7.
I'm on 5.
I don't know.
It just kind of does enough.
It does enough to be playable, but to me, I don't think this does a lot that's actively good.
I could see a 6, I guess.
Okay, I think I'm
just-
fine to settle on 6.
I like it.
Yeah, I think I might be taking the like 1 in a blue 1/3 flyer in blue over this.
Yes, I think so.
But we also decided that card might be a 5, so it's like right on that
I think
borderline.
that card is like around a 5. It does a lot.
Yeah.
Marauding Mako. Single red for a 1/1. Whenever you discard 1 or more cards, put that many +1/+1 counters on this creature, cycling 2. I don't think this is as good as the flyer. However, I like it. You put 2 counters on it, you got your mana's worth. You can threat so much activation of so much more.
Yep.
I think this card is great.
Wasn't there a card like this in Ikoria that it was whenever you cycled, not just whenever you discarded a card, got a counter, and it was like quite good?
I don't remember.
It was like a fox or something.
Anyway. Yeah, the 1-drop fox, yeah.
Yeah, that card was really good, but that was also a set that was extremely focused on cycling. This set, I think, has a little bit less enabling of that, but only a little bit, because this discarding cards is more broad than cycling.
Yeah. And
so
if you get discard one card, I'd say you got your mana's worth. You have a fine card. If you discard 2 cards, woo!
I think you really need to discard 2 cards to be happy with this, because you're not likely going to be discarding a card on turn 2, and a lot of the value of a 1-mana 2/2 is getting it for 2 on turn 2 and turn 3. So, but I think that's going to be totally possible to do, and this creature might actually grow out of hand quite quickly.
Yes. It definitely has that potential.
This is a very high upside card, and I think there are a lot of ways to enable it in the set. I'm going to give it a 3.
Yeah, I think I like that. I was thinking towards a 4. I think I like giving it a 3. It's just the upside's so high, it can get out of hand. It's just 1 mana, and it has a cycling buyout late game.
Right.
It's hard for this card to be bad.
I agree.
If you're build around it just a little bit.
Now we have Road Rage. Red for an instant. Road Rage deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker, where X is 2 plus the number of mounts and vehicles you control.
This card's great. Holy shit.
This card's great. Shock for creatures or planeswalkers.
It's not hard to become strangled at instant speed.
Yeah, not hard at all. You're probably just gonna have a vehicle laying around in the mid game most decks. This card's really good.
This card's really, really good.
I would put this at a 2.5.
I think I'm just happy
Maybe
solidly at just a 2. It's so efficient.
I think that's really fair.
This
could easily just be 1 mana 4 damage in a lot of games.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love it.
Okay, it's 2.
I can see 2.5. I'm starting at 2.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Shock effects in limited formats that tend to revolve around cheap creatures with activated abilities, which this seems to be, can be really, really good. So I'm going to start assuming that it's premium.
Yeah. Next up, we have Tyrox Saurid Tyrant. 1 in a red, legendary creature, dinosaur warrior. It's a 4/1 with no other abilities. 2 mana 4/1. So you've seen a 2 mana 3/1s. How much do we like a 2 mana 4/1 over these many 2 mana 3/1s?
It's the same card.
It's the same card. It trades into 3/4s. We've seen 4 toughness as a benchmark on a lot of cards. I do think it's notably better than 3/1s. It still has the same 1 toughness downside, and it still is gonna trade with your opponents 1/1s or whatever.
Yeah,
but
I think it's pretty bad. It does a little bit more than that. It obviously hits hard if they can't play a 2-drop and you're on the play. I'm not a huge fan, though. I'd put this at a 9.
I think 8.5, 9. I don't think it's doing something irreplaceable at all. It's a replacement level 2-drop that I think does start to eke its way towards being replacement level rather than being it's just slightly below rate rather than below rate like 3/1s. I think the 4th point of power is relevant for the breakpoints of cards we've seen in the set.
Yep, I think that's right. It's also fine crewing. It's fine blocking.
It's a pretty good defensive speed. Just two. It's 2 mana defensive little death touch creature, except it's a 4/1.
It's fine.
It's fine.
It's a 9.
Yeah.
Next up, Sky Crash. It's 1 in a red for an instant. Destroy target artifact with cycling for a red. So just a shatter with cycling.
I think I like this card a lot because I think Shatter is going to be a relevant card 70% of your games, something around that ballpark. And then cycling for a red.
Buyout's really cheap. It's good in the discard decks.
Yeah, exactly. I think in the discard decks, you'll really like having this because you have that cycling buyout that might just be a better card, even if they have an artifact in play. But then also you have a Shatter, which could just kill a lot of the things in this format.
Yeah, I think this card's quite good. It's an uncommon, I think, for a reason.
Yeah, it's so
I would probably put it at a 6. Maybe even a 5.
I think a 5.
Yeah, I think 5's fair.
Start with it. I think it does enough.
I agree with that, actually. I think you value this above most most commons.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like 5.
Next up, we have Adrenaline Jockey. This is 2 and a red for a 3/3 Minotaur pilot. Whenever a player casts a spell, if it's not their turn, this creature deals 4 damage to them. Whenever you activate an exhaust ability, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature.
The flavor text is great. Either I win or we both lose. Take your pick.
Amazing. So this card at a 3-mana 3/3 we've established is slightly below rate. This card, if you have a number, the ability I care more about here is the exhaust ability, or the thing that interacts with exhaust creatures. Because if you can get this up to a 4/4 without really sacrificing tempo, like just by activating exhaust abilities you want to activate, like you're now happy with that rate. Like 3-mana 4/4 is like good, and it also does kind of protect your exhaust abilities a bit by being like, oh, no, you can't instant speed interaction response and like.
Yeah, that's what that ability is there for, which is pretty nice.
Pretty nice. Obviously, if your opponent is ahead enough or like doesn't care about the life total enough, they can still just go for it, take the dome the 4, and like get the tempo swing. But it is still like a large chunk of damage.
Yeah, I think this is not a premium card, but it's pretty good. I think it's like worse if you're behind, but red is planning on being ahead. Red has a good amount of exhaust abilities. It's really nice if you have a lot of exhaust abilities, just because it can get big quite quickly.
Yeah.
It is notable that it is a symmetric effect, so it's not just upside for you, that ability.
Yes,
you can't cast instants on their turn without taking 4.
This is true.
Which is tough. Overall, I think the package is pretty nice, though, so I'd give this a 7. I think
I'm about there, too. Also, with the ability, though, like, especially with like 2 or 3 of these, and if you pick them up early enough, you can just cater your draft. Like, it's not fully symmetrical because you get to make the deck building decisions around your deck.
Yeah. It is symmetrical in the same way that all Magic symmetrical effects are, which is that you can craft the deck around it.
Exactly, yeah.
Pace Setter Paragon. 2 and a red for a 2/3 human pilot, and it has an exhaust ability. 2 and a red, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. It gains double strike until end of turn.
I don't like this card much.
Really?
It seems fun. Oh, wait, no, I guess you can do it at instant speed. The threat of activation there is pretty big.
Yeah.
I was just thinking you had to do it sorcery speed.
I mean, it's not great, but like a 3/4 double strike wrecks pretty much any combat.
Yeah, no, it's 3 mana. This creature is going to win this combat. And like, it is nice that you have that plus the threat of 6 damage.
Right, this creature is hard to block, and it's hard to not block.
Yeah.
Now, it is just a 3 mana 2/3, so like...
It's not that hard to not block.
Yes. As long as you have a healthy enough life total, it's not hard to not block.
Yeah.
But like, I think this is fine. I don't think it's actively good.
That's about where I'm at too, I think. I'm not like that excited about it, but like, it can definitely represent some mayhem.
I'd give it a 7.
I think an 8.
Yeah, 8's fair.
Like,
3 mana 2/3 is pretty below me.
Like I'm close to a 9 just because like 3 mana 2/3 is below 8, and then like the double strike turn is nice, but then it's the 3/4 that you spent 6 mana on.
Yeah.
Like, fine.
That's not great. I think the threat of activation is the best part about it, and then even then, like, okay, you got in with a 2/3. I guess that enables speed, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
Like, that is some structural synergy that's pretty important, but like, ultimately, the card's not great. You're spending a lot of mana to do your things.
Yep.
Alright, 8 for Pace Setter Paragon.
Outpace Oblivion. This is 2 and a red for an enchantment that starts your engines. When this enchantment enters, it deals 5 damage to up to 1 target creature or planeswalker. Then 2 mana, sacrifices the enchantment, it deals 2 damage to each player who doesn't have max speed.
Gotta go fast.
Oh, I like this card a lot. It's a 3 mana deal 5, which is like a pretty effectively cost removal spell, and it also has 2 mana sack, build speed unless your opponent's already hit max speed.
Yep. And in most speed decks, you will be the one who is building speed first, so it will be able to build it for you.
Yeah.
It does really good.
It sucks that it hits yourself if you're not at max speed, but like, it's fine. You'll activate the ability when you need it. It's just gravy on top of your 3 mana removal spell.
Yeah, I think this card's quite good. Really great removal in red, pretty premium. I would give it a
5?
I would give it a 4. I was even thinking about 3, but I think 3 mana is too much to make that really
Yeah.
premium.
And sorcery speed. I
It
think
is.
4 or 5.
I would say it's a 4. I think this is just gonna like
comfortable
starting your
with
engines is valuable in red.
Yeah. Oh,
Just enough, I think.
I think so. Yeah, I'm happy with 4. It does enough.
Fuel the Flames. 2 in a red. Instant. Fuel the Flames deals 2 damage to each creature. So instant speed, 3 mana Pyroclasm, like a Vampire's Vengeance kind of, and has cycling for 2. Really nice.
Yeah, these kind of effects are very dependent on the format.
They are.
Like we've seen some formats where like we see these effects and they like deal 2 damage to each of your opponent's creatures basically and still kind of suck.
Yep.
But this one having the cycling buyout I think is really, really big.
Right. I think the only thing necessary is going to be that there are a subset of decks that this is very good against.
Yes.
And if that is true, then this card's going to be good, I think.
And then also if you can like pick it early enough that you can build your deck around it and play it more reliably. Like you have less X2s and X1s, which is going to be hard to do, but I think it also is quite doable.
Instant speed is also really nice because it doesn't just kill X2s. You can have a weird combat and then blow them out with it.
Yeah.
Or like at least use it in a way that gets you your card worth back. I think this card is likely going to be pretty good. Yeah. I'm high on it. I think I'm going to put it at like a 6. I think it's a unique effect that you're going to want to prioritize in your decks. I mean, it's not good in a red aggressive deck, but I think it is an effect that every red controlling deck is going to want access to. Yeah. Those decks aren't very common, but like I still think that if I'm drafting a deck that could turn into that, or like is just multicolor soup that includes red, I'm really going to like this card, and I'm going to prioritize it over maybe slightly more consistent effects because I want access to it.
I agree. I'm like between a 5 and a 6.
Yeah, I think I'm good with 6. I don't think it's going to be actively really great at any point, which I think is like 5s are sort of getting to the cards that are,
that's fair,
really good and consistent, but yeah.
Next up we have Endrider Spike Splitter. 3 in a red for, you guessed it, a 3/4.
There's so many of these.
Yeah.
I love these.
It has reach and start your engines. And then at max speed, at the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn.
Ooh.
That's a lot.
That is a max speed payoff right there.
That is a max speed payoff.
It is not an enabler.
Yes, this card is very defensive. A 4 mana 3/4 reach. You're trying to block your 3/3 flyers that we've seen a couple of, and like block and like eat up all the 3 power or 3 toughness creatures that are running around, which there are a notable number of. And like I think that putting reach on a 4 mana 3/4 makes me actually happy about the body.
I agree.
Not overjoyed, but like I think it's on rate.
Satisfied with the body,
yes.
I would say.
And so then this card very well having this defensive body does let you then like connect with like your 1/3 flyers or whatever and build up your speed more reliably. And then once you do that, if you still have this gummy body that you were not trying to trade off really in combat, but like use as a defensive deterrent, then you start drawing 2 cards every turn, and then it's like, whew.
The reward is quite incredible.
Yeah, like this does so much for a 4-drop.
While
love having
a
high floor.
This might be my favorite card in the set to play with, all things said and done. I would put this at a 4. It might even be a 3, but I think I'm going to start it at a 4.
I'm either at 4 or 5, just because it doesn't contribute that well to building speed.
Yeah.
But it is, like, the upside's there. I think...
This is a nice curve topper for an aggro deck.
5.
It's a nice mid-range 4-drop threat for a mid-range deck.
Yeah.
And it's a totally fine blocker that can also be a late-game card in a control deck. Like,
yeah.
I think it's just really quite good.
Yeah. I just the main
4-drops are like not super valuable and limited. So
4-drop that isn't like super assertive, so it's hard for me to get too high on it, but I like it a lot.
Yeah. Reckless Velocitar, 3 in a red, another 4-drop for a 3/3, and whenever this creature saddles a mount or crews a vehicle during your main phase, that mount or vehicle gets +2/+0 and gains trample until end of turn.
Really nice with a 6/3.
Really nice with the 6/3, but I'm not spending 4 mana on a creature that I mainly intend to crew with.
Yeah, no, it's not efficient at all.
Yeah.
Like, trample is a very valuable keyword. In
The
this
ability
set,
is nice, and in board stalls, this is going to be pretty sweet, but, like, I think this card is likely a trap.
I'd buy it.
I would much rather produce a pilot token, incidentally, than spend 4 mana and a card on this.
Yeah.
Even though it's giving me, like, +2/+0 and trample, and can get into combat on its own, but, like, this card is bad if it's getting into combat on its own, and I still think quite inefficient if it's just crewing vehicles. So, I'm quite low on this card.
Yeah, I want to start... I think there's enough upside that I want to start at a 9.
Yeah.
Rather than a 10.
I think that's fair. There might be some combos with it, like the 6/3
Yeah.
kind of counts.
It's inefficient, but it does do something somewhat unique.
Yes.
And so, like, there'll be times when, like, you run it as your 23rd and you're happy
But don't
enough.
just read the word mountain vehicle in this card, see it's an uncommon, and be like, I'm a red-white mountain vehicle deck, I'm gonna play it.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it might be somewhat good. Like, there's the white 2-drop 3/2 vehicle. This kind of curves nicely into it on turn 4. But, like, you just need so many vehicles, and it does send them in and force them to trade with all of them, but, like, that's such a specific scenario that you're trying to construct. I'm not super optimistic about it, but I do think I'll give it enough respect to give it a 9 instead of a 10.
Yeah. Also, like, so bad defensively. Next up, Spire Mech Cycle. 4 and a red for a 5/4 vehicle. Haste. Exhaust. Tap another untapped mount or vehicle you control. This creature becomes a artifact creature. Put a +1/+1 counter on it for each mount and or vehicle you control other than this vehicle. Crew 2. I kind of like this.
I don't know how much I like this.
So this card requires you to have enough density of other mounts and vehicles, and your payoff for that is a 5-mana 6/5 or bigger haste, which I think is a pretty good rate for a 5.
I mean, it is that on that turn, and then you still have to crew it, right?
Oh, it's not.
No.
It's permanent.
Oh, I'm wrong.
Yeah. No.
Okay. I am now very into this card.
Yes. No. It is an exhaustibility that permanently transforms it.
So
like
this
the
is
ones for
mostly
0
just a
mana.
creature.
Yeah. No, you want to play. You're playing this card because it becomes a creature.
Okay, I was misreading it. Yeah. This card is pretty incredible.
This card is pretty incredible. It's like, it reminds me of like the 5-drop hasters we've seen in other sets that just
Yes.
slam for 5. This one has a little bit more setup cost,
But only a little bit more. I mean, 5
also
mana,
can be
5/4
huge.
haste crew 2 is not that bad.
It's not that bad. And if you have more than one mount or vehicle in play,
Oh boy.
oh, it's big. Like the baseline of 6/5 as you're set up to just make it a creature, good.
Yeah.
Your baseline, even the baseline without just crewing it, fine. The bigger it gets, just juice. I love this card.
Yeah. No, this card's really good. Wow.
That being said, it is a 5-drop, so I'm kind of between a 4 and a 5, leaning 5.
I would give it a 4. I think these type of haste effects are can be really, really hard to deal with.
I think that's fair.
It's so weird. I started a low on this, but I was just misreading it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
this
think
card
4 is reasonable.
cracks
This
in
card
for a
is
ton.
Pew. Damage.
I also want to note I love the art on this.
I can barely see
And I
it from
really,
here.
really like that they're leaning in this set to very distinct and different art styles between cards. I think part of it is that the set takes place in different worlds, but I personally am a really big fan of this a little bit more abstract, a little bit more colorful art style. Obviously people listening to this in audio won't be able to tell, but Spire Mech Cycle has really cool art. Look it up.
Yes, let's continue.
Dracosaur Auxiliary, 4 red for a 4/4 flying haste. It has saddle 3, it's a mount, and whenever this creature attacks while saddled, it deals 2 damage to any target. Interesting.
At first reading this card, I was like, oh my god, busted. Second reading, I was like, eh. And now that we're at this point in the set review, I'm like, lots of X1s and a good number of X2s flying around. I think this card will get a card a lot of the time if you can manage to saddle it when you play it. And the question is that worth the opportunity cost of your 6 mana 4/4 flyer and saddle 3.
I think 6 mana 4/4 flying haste is a little bit underrated.
I think a good bit underrated,
Yeah.
but not like terribly.
Saddle 3 is a lot.
But as a pilot,
It is, yeah. I mean, yeah. I'm assuming pilots can crew any vehicle, and there are like 1 or 2 exceptions in the entire set.
yes. Basically, for me, it's the difference between saddle 3 and saddle 4.
Yes.
There's a huge differential there. It's like when I see saddle 3, I'm like, I can work to make that happen. There's enough cards that make that happen. Some of them being incidental. Versus
Yeah.
saddle 4, saddle 5, over like crew 4, crew 5, I'm like, oh, I have to work for that.
Absolutely.
And most of what we've seen is saddle and mount 1 through 3.
Yep. I'm not too high on this card. I just don't think it's like incredibly high impact as a 6-drop. It will have some games where it is. It will also have some games where it's really medium.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm putting this at an 8.
I think I'm chill to start an 8 for it. I could see going up as much as to a 6 at most if like just every game you want to be, it's going to be killing creatures, but I think that's not necessarily going to be the case.
Yeah. I think we'll start at 8. It could be a little bit higher, could be a little bit lower, but I think that's a good place to start.
Yep. Next up, we have Push the Limit.
This is a sweet one.
5 red. Sorcery. Return all mountain vehicle cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. Sacrifice them at the beginning of the next end step. Vehicles you control become artifact creatures until end of turn. Creatures you control gain haste until end of turn. Oh,
So
this is so weird.
it is a build around, obviously, and it is a 7 mana sorcery
that
does
doesn't have
nothing until you can cast it.
and doesn't have any lasting impact on the board after unless you're getting recycling ETBs.
However, there is a 1 mana 6/3 menace cycler
This is
vehicle,
true.
and there are other vehicles that have like cycling and stuff like
And
that.
just the battlefield draw 2 cards. And
Yeah,
this battlefield kill something.
I mean,
This is a beautiful card.
this is like a weird graveyard overrun, I guess is how I would put it. I think it's only really good if it's either literally ending the game when you cast it or effectively ending the game because you got an insane amount of board affecting value from your ETBs.
Yeah. This does not seem like a card that I expect to reliably be able to build around.
I agree.
I feel like it's a card.
This is a card that you might have 1 or 2 decks, a format where you have it and it's actually good.
Yeah, like I want to have already incidentally picked up good cycling vehicles that I otherwise want to play. And then like I can
Which is, just pause there, high bar.
Yes.
Yes.
And like that plus like good defensive speed to get to 7 mana.
So that's like, you're playing vehicles and you want defensive speed? That doesn't really compute.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of tension here. The payoff can be incredible, but it's quite hard to set up the payoff being incredible.
It's very, very hard to set up because it's also like not always easy to trade vehicles off. There's like always the tap a creature opportunity cost of getting a vehicle into combat in the first place.
I love this card. I think it is a great design. It is awesome to include in the set for story equity. I will try to draft a deck around it and make it good, and I think it's very possible to do that. I also think it's a 10.
I agree. I
Like-
agree with every statement said there.
Yeah. Like, don't try to make this work if you're at the Pro Tour in your draft unless you've practiced it before and really think you know how to make it work. But, like, it's a fun and I think going to be viable sometimes build around for fun arena drafts.
Yes. We're in green.
We're in green. Stampeding Scurryfoot. Single green for a 1/1. Creature mouse. And then it has an exhaust ability, 3 and a green. Put a +1/+1 counter on this creature and create a 3/3 green elephant creature token. I don't love it.
So, first, just like on full rate, 5 mana for a 3/3 and a 2/2. Fine?
Fine,
Decent.
but not exciting. 3 green for a 3/3 and a 2/2. I am not playing that card on its own. And I don't think this is that much better than that card.
Yeah, because the 1/1's not super impactful, but you get to trade that off by getting that amount of board presence on turn 4.
Yeah, it's sort of like a 4 mana 3/3 and 2/2, which is pretty good, but
Yeah.
not overwhelmingly good, and you need to have spent 1 mana on it in the first 3 turns to have that actually be true.
Yeah. If I can ever repeat this ability, which green is the card that has the ability to repeat exhaust abilities off of like a card of it, I get a bit more excited, because once I get 2/3 off of this, like, it's pretty good.
Yeah, but ultimately, like, I don't think this is a card that I'm happy to put in my deck. I will put it in my deck sometimes, and I'll be like, okay, that's fine. Unless I have, like, a lot of exhaust synergies, and maybe green is a color with a ton of exhaust synergy, but we haven't seen that yet. You think it is?
I mean, from what we've seen from, like, the uncommons.
Grade, I guess, pending exhaust density in green, exhaust synergy density, but I'm probably on, like, an 8 or a 9 for this.
My instance is 7.
Okay.
I think it's enough synergy, and I do think the 2 bodies, pretty good. And the 1/1 bodies sometimes transfer 3/1.
Yeah, that's true. There are a lot of X ones. That's fair.
Yeah. Like,
okay.
I think it just
I'll move my grade down
things.
to, or like up to an 8, but I don't think I'm going higher than that, except if I see particular cards that work really well with this.
Fair enough.
You're putting it at 7. I think that's fair.
I think so, yeah. And I could see going lower. I could see. All right. Next up, we have Beast Strider Vanguard. 1 in a green for a 2/2 human knight. 4 in a green. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. You may reveal a permanent card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest of the bottom of your library into any order. So this is a 2 mana 2/2 with 5 mana. Basically, draw a card, and you get some card selection on it. But you're gonna hit a card almost always because it can hit lands.
Yep.
How do we feel about that? It's kind of like modern day Azure Mage, but like a little bit worse.
Yeah, I don't love it.
I don't love it in green.
I agree.
Specifically. I think in green, like, you're going to have, especially if you have exhaust, a lot of ways to spend your mana that's pretty efficient. And also a 2 mana 2/2 is like pretty below rate. So it's going to be hard to actually like be in spots where
5 is just so much.
It's so much.
Yeah. I think, I mean, there are some creatures, obviously, like the 2 mana 0/4 and stuff, that add mana for activated abilities. Also, every creature in the set has an activated ability.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. But like, I think among all your activated ability creatures, this is one of the less efficient ones, which means you're just not going to activate it very much, which means this is pretty close to a 2 mana 2/2. It's not totally that, because like, drawing a card is really meaningful value, and if you just have 5 mana laying around, this really does let you get meaningful value out of it as opposed to getting nothing. But I'm not excited about this card. I'm going to put it at like an 8.
I think, yeah, it's an 8 or a 9 for me. It's like not just a 9 because it is a 2-drop, but it's also just a 2/2 that's not really doing anything besides its late game potential.
Yeah.
And so, like, yeah, I'm pretty low on it.
Yeah, I think 8 is a fair grade for a 2-drop that is otherwise pretty mediocre.
It might also like get better post board in some matchups.
Yep. All right, another 2-drop. We've got Gibberick Omnivore. It is a power crept grizzly bears. 1 in a green for a 3/2.
That's it.
That's it.
We finally skipped 3/1 land with our 3/2.
Yeah. That's what green gets, an extra toughness.
Extra toughness, that's the buff.
It's an 8. It's a very medium 2-drop.
Yeah, it's like a 7.58. It's like, it does the thing of attack and block as grizzly bear do. It dies to their 3/4s and cries. Like every other 2-drop in this format.
Yep, it's like good at crewing vehicles. It's like pretty bad generically in combat, but not awful. Yeah. It is an 8, I think. I don't even think I would say a 7.5. I think it would just say an 8.
Yeah. Next up we have Venom Sac Lagak. 1 in a green for a 2/1 lizard mount with Death Touch. And a saddle 2, and when it attacks while saddled, it gets +0/+3 until end of turn.
It becomes a 2/4 death touch.
2/4 death touch. That's pretty
that is hard to block.
good. Pretty fucking good at building speed.
Yes. And 2 mana 2/1 death touch
is a
not
pretty
bad.
fine rate. Yeah, I like this card. I think it's very solid. I don't think it's like anything to write home about. Like 2 mana 2/1, kind of poopy. Like
mount is nice though.
Smaller creatures. It being like mount typing matters a lot.
That's the thing we should have noted with the 5 red sorcery is like mounts are better with it because they just trade on their own, and this is one of those.
Yeah.
Certainly.
You sacrifice them end of turn, right?
No, I know. I'm just saying that like
they trade
building
off,
up to it, they're better.
No, that's true. Yeah.
But anyway, so 2 mana, 2/1 Death Touch. I think this is the green 2-drop that you really actively want.
Yeah, it's better than the last two by a lot.
Yeah. I would give it a solid 7, maybe even a 6, a 6.5.
Yeah, I'm around like 6, 6.5. Like, it's just nice to have.
Yep, I think 6.5 is like a very fair grade for this. I like the 1/3 flyer better than it, but like not by a ton.
Yeah.
Silken Strength. 1 in a green for an enchantment aura with flash. Enchant creature or vehicle. When it enters, untap enchanted permanent, and enchanted permanent gets +1/+2 and has reach. Fine combat trick. It can ambush a flyer and sticks around.
I mean,
it's not a lot of stats. It's enough stats to win most combats, I would say, but not all combats.
And like it surprises them in more ways than one.
I think I like this a little bit better than the version of this effect that we've gotten more often, which is 3 mana for +2/+2.
Yeah.
1+1/+2 in reach is somewhat close to +2/+2, and a whole extra mana less, I think, is a little bit better.
2 mana is a lot more enticing than 3 mana. That's very true.
Yeah. Although, obviously, I think the last one gave Trample, maybe, so, like, you know, similar.
I don't remember,
Yeah, it was in Duskmourn.
Oh, yeah, although that card was awful.
Yeah. This card is usually bad, though, so shaving a mana and making it, like, slightly worse, but, like, I think worth shaving a mana for that amount of worse, it also makes it potentially competitive, but I don't think actively good.
I mean, the last time we saw this effect also didn't untap the creature, which this does.
That's true.
That is also like a
value, yeah.
It's definitely a tricky bit of value that, I mean, if your opponent knows to play around it, like, you don't get as much leverage out of. Like, we've seen in the past, like, those kind of effects, like, if your opponent knows they're there, that's not that much more surprising than a normal trick, but it is, like...
This is going to be one of those first week of the format blows people out a lot cards.
Yeah.
But I think it will probably reduce in value as time goes on.
Yeah, but it's efficient enough
that
you're not, like, sacrificing that much by repping it, and you can also just bluff it when you don't have it.
Yep. I think I'm giving this an 8.
Yeah, I'm happy. I was going to say 8.
Yep.
Next up, we have Run Over. 1 and a green. Instant. This spell costs 1 less to cast if it targets a mount or a vehicle you control. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature an opponent controls. So 2 mana, Rabid Bite your opponent at instant speed, or 1 mana if it's off a mount or vehicle. Notably, quite nice with the Death Touch 2/1 mount.
Yes.
This card's just
good.
It's about as good as the white deal damage equals the number of creatures control / shatter, maybe a little bit better.
I think that's a very good comparison, because this is like semi-conditional, but usually will kill something quite good removal spell that you do need creatures for and can get blown out by removal. But this is instant. That one is sorcery. I like it a lot. I would give this like a 6.
I think I might even give it a 5.
Yeah.
Like, especially in the mount space, if this costs 1 mana, that's just
1 mana
hyper
is great.
efficient.
Yeah,
and, like,
I wish it was
mounts.
reduced only if you control the mount, but it has to target the mount.
Yeah.
So you have to have crewed your vehicle, or just obviously just have the mount.
Yeah, I mean, I'm mostly excited about with the Death Touch Shard.
Right. That's obviously a very good interaction. That's kind of my expectation for the best interaction with it.
Yeah, obviously you won't always have that.
Yeah. I think 5 is reasonable. 5.5, probably.
Yeah. Just that effect at instant speed we don't see very often.
Yeah. Next we have Loxodon Surveyor. 2 and a green for a 3/3. Centaur Courser, my beloved. It has start your engines and max speed. 3, exile this card from your graveyard, draw a card. Pretty simple. It's the completion of this cycle.
I would have loved this card back when Centaur Courser was a great rate.
Yes. Now I just think it's fine.
I think it's very fine. 3 mana 3/3, slightly below rate, but like it'll eventually cash in for a card, which is nice enough, and it'll still like interact fine enough in combat. I am low on it though in the 3/1 format.
Yes. I don't know if this is the 3/1 format. Like, I think
so
there are 3/4s though running around
that's
too.
Also, like it lines up terribly into 3/1s and terribly into 3/4s, and I feel
this
like
might be a sneaky poopy card.
Yeah. Just because of breakpoints.
Yeah, starting your engines is nice, but this is not the color for it. This might just be a card that doesn't really have a home.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be a little bit bold based on the creature sizing that we've seen so far. I'm gonna say this is a 9.
Oh, I thought you were going to say it's a 10. I'm just comfy saying it's a 9. I'm like leaning towards 10.
Okay, maybe I still overrate Centaur coursers. I think it's a 9. I think you'll
it's-
play it sometimes and it's fine. The max speed is kind of nice. That will incidentally happen sometimes, but like
Yeah.
it's also hard to turn on in green, I think. So
Agreed.
yeah, I think this card's stinky poopy.
Stinky poop poop. Next up, we have Pothole Mole. 2 and a green. Creature Mole. It's a 2/3. When this creature enters, mill 3 cards. Then you may return a land card from your graveyard to your hand. Whoa.
Eccentric Farmer, another one of my beloveds. Can you guys tell I like green commons and limited?
Crazy.
We literally went as the previous version of this card to a Halloween party as in costume as Eccentric Farmer.
Yeah, a couple of years ago. It was great.
Yeah. This effect is worse than I want it to be because 3 mana 2/3 is under rate, and getting a land back on turn 3 but not getting selection on it, so it's not like pure fixing, is annoying.
Yeah, it is nice. This one lets you grab a land from anywhere in your graveyard. It doesn't have to be the one out of the cards you milled, which is different from what we've seen before.
Okay, that's good to know. Milling can also be somewhat valuable, although I don't think this is a set where that's like incredibly true. It's just true to the extent that it's true in like a normal set.
We haven't seen that much payoff for it.
Yeah, I think green-black is a little bit of a mill space, but it's also not a theme that they're pushing really hard, and they often do.
Like if we look at our green-black uncommons, like they don't really pay it off. It's like a big vehicle, and then also a card that gives you some filtering and a reanimation spell. Like, not crazy about that.
Yeah. This card, I think, is just a fine common. I'm not super excited about it, but I also think it's hard to be really bad just because, like, the rate is strong.
It's a 2/3.
I mean, Borderland Ranger is nice, and, like...
This is worse than Borderland Rangers by a lot.
Yes, because it doesn't fix you. Okay.
I'm sorry I have to break your heart. I think it's a 9.
I think it's an 8. I'm gonna say 8.
I think you're allowed to think that.
Yeah, this might be my bias coming in.
I mean, I hope it's better than a 9. It's
Me
just like
too.
from what we've seen, it just doesn't seem to be doing
this draws you
what we're doing
2
in
cards. Like, it is a 2/3 on board and a land in your hand. That
You
is a
sometimes
little bit better
miss
than
on
a
land.
divination.
You miss on land, like, 30% of the time?
If you're casting it on turn 3, yes.
Yeah.
Not even 30%. Less than that, I think.
I'd have to run the numbers. We can use Jason's hyper geometric. Anyway, I think it will sometimes whiff, and it'll feel quite bad when it whiffs.
I'm not allowing myself to give this a 9. It's an 8. You can rate it as a 9. Veloheart Bike, 2 and a green, for a 4/2 vehicle with crew 2. When it enters, you gain 2 life, and it's a manolith. You can tap it to add 1 mana of any color.
That's a lot of extra text on a manolith.
It's a lot of extra text on a manolith.
I don't hate it.
I kind of hate it.
I think it's better than Eccentric Farmer.
I don't agree. I actually, like, strongly don't agree.
Yeah, I don't think it's very good.
I don't think this is very good at all. Like, a 4/2 vehicle with crew 2 is not very good. Gaining 2 life is, like, quite marginal, but you like it, I guess. And then tapping that... Like, all of this adds up to a card that's, like, fine, but it's gonna be hard for me to have reasons to put this in my deck that are not just, like, I want vehicles for vehicle synergies.
I mean, mostly I just don't think... If I'm a deck that wants this card, I don't think I'll ever need to prioritize it.
Yes.
Like, it's, I think, pretty narrow. Like, I want it in a... Basically, I want, like, my 5-color green deck that has, like, high impact, different color payoffs, where it's... This is a manolith that is, like, close to being worth it. Like, the gain 2 life, I think, puts it, like, head and shoulders above the colorless one. Even though the colorless one is
I wouldn't say head and shoulders. Like, I think the gain 2 life puts it, like, on rate maybe with the other one. And then being an actual creature puts it head and shoulders.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it is better than that card. I mean, it is in green specifically, which makes it a little bit worse. But, like, I don't know. I'd give this a 9.
I think I'm between 8 and 9, yeah. I think it's going to be specific enough when you actually want it. Like, I don't think you just play it generically in your green decks. So, yeah, I think that's fine.
Yep.
Next up, we have Bestow Greatness. 2 and a green for an instant. Target creature gets +4/+4 and gains trample until end of turn. That's a big beating. This card hurts.
It does. It's also 3 mana for a combat.
Oh, for
trick.
sure. It is 3 mana. It's 3 mana.
I see this more as a lava axe than a combat trick.
I mean, I think it's a card. The hope with the card is it's a heavy quotes 2-for-1 of win combat and deal your opponent a chunk of damage.
Yes.
Which is like, it makes sense that the cost of 3 mana. 3 mana is pretty awkward to leverage it, and it's pretty bad defensively.
Yep.
So
I think I would prefer 2 mana +3/+3 to this by like a good amount.
Oh, by a lot. Like
Obviously, and trample. I mean.
Yeah, we had that in Murders of Karlov mana.
And that card was good, but it wasn't like a premium common by any means.
No, it was approaching there. It was like very good in that format, but
yeah, I think this is not great. I would say it's like
8?
an 8. Yeah, I think that's right.
Like it will win some games. It is a powerful
It's
effect,
high
but
impact.
it is hard to leverage.
Yes.
In some games, when you're behind, it'll just feel awful.
Yep. All right, 8 for Bestow Greatness. Next up, Broken Wings.
Never seen this card before.
2 and a green for an instant. Destroy target artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying. Better in this format than usual.
How close is this to a main deckable card in this format, would you say? From
Oh,
what
I
we've seen
think
so far?
it's probably very main deckable. I don't think it's that efficient, though.
Mhm.
Like, 3 mana, you can just play Murder.
Yeah.
And, like, this is pretty similar to that. It's slightly less flexible, but better on terms of the cost. So, like, I think this is probably just, like, a very medium removal spell in
I
this
agree,
format.
yeah. And I think, like, hitting only artifacts, like, you'll have something to hit often, but you won't often have something you're excited to hit,
Yes.
which I think is an important distinction.
Yeah.
Like, just because it's live doesn't mean it's good.
Right. I think this is worse than normal removal, but not by a lot. I think it's, like, very playable in this format. I think it's main deckable, but I think you're not always going to main deck it.
I think I hopefully want to main deck it less than 50% of the time.
Maybe, but very
But
slightly less.
but I'll do it
There are
sometimes.
really a lot of artifacts and enchantments.
This is true.
And obviously creatures with flying, like that's
Yeah.
a real upside too. I would give this...
An 8?
Yeah, I think an 8 is fair.
Next up, we have Hazard of the Dunes. This card's art makes it look like a rare. 3 and a green for a 4/4 worm with trample and a reach. That's pretty efficient.
Yeah, that's
That
pretty
does,
good.
That's like I was saying before, I like 4 mana 4/4 as like on rate for a 4-drop. And this has trample and reach, meaning that it has both offensive and defensive utility. And also, we're not done. Exhaust, 6 and a green, put 3+1/+1 counters on this creature. So it becomes a 7/7 trample and reach. I like it.
I like
think
it.
this is like the green 4-drop that I want.
Yep.
Unless there's a better one I'm forgetting, but I don't think there is. Like, it's just doing, like, both a lot offensively and defensively. It's a flexible card, depending on what role you need to play in the game, at just, like, a good rate. Like, you expect green to have efficient creatures, and it does. And then also, late game, if you have nothing else to do, it's big.
Yep. I think the exhaustibility is quite expensive.
Yeah.
And that's intentional because it's a totally fine rate creature on its own. You're mostly playing this as a 4 mana 4/4 trample reach. That's pretty good. It's not amazing, but it's like definitively on rate for Modern Limited.
Yes.
Which is saying a lot. And then you get this exhaustibility as well, which is kind of nice.
It's just like gravy.
I would give
Instead of
this...
activation.
I think, like, I want to give this a 6, but I think it's more like a 7 just because it's not a 4-drop that, like, actively makes a big difference in a game. It's just a 4-drop that is, like, totally fine. And I just don't want to give 4-drops that are fine better than, like, a 7.
I think I want to give it a 6.5. It's just, like, I think it's a little bit better than just fine. Like,
Yeah, once you do get to 7 mana, it's a really good attacker.
Like, it has, like, good threat of activation. It just is so flexible.
It's hard to say it has threat of activation when the ability costs 7 because you're just clearly spending your entire turn on it if you do it once you get there. And so I think that, like, that makes it a lot less of a threat of activation thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I see what you're saying. Like,
yeah.
I think 6.5 or 7, somewhere in there. Card's, like, surprisingly good for a green 4-drop that just kind of has abilities.
Yes.
Next up, a Lacrian Jaguar, or Lacrian maybe. 4 and a green for a 4/4 Vigilance Cat Mount. It has saddle 1, and whenever it attacks while saddled, it gets +2/+2 until end of turn.
It's like it's a 5-drop that does the 5-drop thing. 5 and a 4/4, not a great rate, but like begrudgingly playable sometimes. And then attack is a 6/6. That's
playable.
fine. Like I kind of want my 5 to just be a 6/6, but you know.
And like a 6/6 vigilance is nice, but this is not a 6/6 vigilance.
It's a 4/4 vigilance, really.
Right.
That somebody steals them 2 extra damage.
Right.
Just
I'm
like
not
Hat's face is
super.
scary.
I wouldn't even say I'm not super excited about it. I would say I'm super not excited
Yeah.
about it.
No, this card is like very, very, very replaceable 5-drop.
I am gonna be quite disappointed if I need to put this card in my decks. I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice that
It's a mount, so
Yeah.
it does the build around thing with the red card.
And the green-white card.
Yeah, kind of. The green white card is like really low curve, but
Yeah.
I
like a 9.
think this is a 10. I just think like
I think it's
I'm
back
gonna
to
get
the
these
10s.
for free.
Yes. I just think like that's kind of both 9 and 10 for me.
Okay.
And to varying extents, like 10 is more towards the, oh, I just want to let this pass along past me in the pack. This is a card where like, I'm not taking it over anything, but like, it is a playable card that I'll pick up for like I'll prioritize it slightly higher if I'm trying to cut green late pack. For example.
Okay. Let me put it this way.
I think it's a non-zero green signal.
I honestly disagree. I think late in the pack, you will take a 2-mana 3/1 vanilla over this in a different color, even if you're mono green, because you would like to speculate about opening a bomb in that other color and wanting a 2-drop.
Alright, that's fair.
And I think that just makes it a 10. Like,
Yeah, that's
I just
fair
think
enough. That's fair enough.
you just don't prioritize this card at all. You will take it if you're green, and you will like be able to play it if you're really, really, really short on playables.
This is like your 26th playable.
Yes, I agree. So 9 or 10, I would argue for 10.
I think that's fair, yeah.
Yeah.
Move on. Migrating Ketrodon. 4 green. For a dinosaur, that's a 6/6 reach. When this creature enters, you gain 4 life, cycling 2.
That's a stabilizer.
That is a stabilizer. Actually, I like this.
I like this a lot.
I don't think it's incredible because it's a 6-drop, but I like it.
This is what you need to be a playable 6-drop in limited.
Yeah, like it blocks anything. It's bigger than anything. And it also recoups advantage to like
4 life is a lot of
stabilize.
life. Cycling is a really nice ability to have on your 6-drop. 2 is a lot, but like it's not 3. I like this card a lot. You never want like more than 2,
Yeah.
but it's good. It's a really good top end of your curve.
I also like this card even more if I can play it for 5 mana and get a 1/1 pilot.
Yes.
Like this card is, I think, actively good with that reanimation spell.
I don't know if I would say actively good, because you're kind of making 2 cards that are medium into like 1 card that is good.
Yeah.
Which is just not really something you want to be actively doing in limited a lot, but
Yeah, I mean it's not, you're not playing the reanimation spell just because you have this card. I'm just saying it's another
Right.
piece of the puzzle that makes that card
fine.
approach playability.
Yeah. Okay, I would give this.
I want to give it an 8 just because of 6 mana opportunity cost.
I was gonna say 6.
I can see 7. It's just a 6-drop.
Yeah, it's a 6-drop, but I think this might be kind of a build around 6-drop in that like it's actually a fine control finisher in green decks.
And it's just what you want.
So I think 7 is fair.
I think 7 might be fair. Yeah, it's expensive. I could see. Yeah.
6 is aggressive, but like cycling's nice. I don't know.
Yeah, this is true.
All right, I think 7. I'm happy with a 7 for
Yeah.
Migrating Ketrodon. Next up, we have Molt Tender, green for a 1/1. It is an insect druid. It's an uncommon, so we're getting into the green uncommons. It taps to mill a card, and it also taps and exiles a card from your graveyard and adds 1 mana of any color. I'm weirdly not very excited about this card.
Yeah, it's hard to. We haven't seen like that many things that enable it consistently.
Yeah.
And then your payoff is a Birds of Paradise that can't all like it's not. It's you will not be playing your 3-drop on 2 with this card. That's just not how it works.
That's not possible.
And like, if you get lucky, maybe you can play. I mean, not lucky. I mean, you can play your 4-drop on 3 with it, if you tap it to mill first and you have it on turn 1. It's like, It reminds me of the 1 mana 1/2 from the oil counter set that tapped to put an oil counter in and tapped to untap a land.
Very similar to
That
that.
card was like fine, I think.
That card was fine. There were oil counter synergies. It was a 1/2. This is a little bit easier to create mana with, but only a little bit. It will just create like 2 mana in the mid game for you a lot of the time. But
Yeah.
I don't think that's worth spending a card on.
Yeah, it also this card also depends how much you care about tap mill a card as upside.
Right. That I think is a really important part of it.
And like I don't think we've seen that many like graveyard payoffs that I'm excited about.
And tap mill a single card is like really slow milling.
Yeah.
I think this card is like a 9.
I think I'm happy starting at a 9 and potentially just slotting in at 10s.
It might even be a 10,
I
yeah.
think the card's actually going to be either a 10 or a 6. And I
Yes.
think it's probably
I think it's more likely to be a 10, so let's start it at a 9, I think.
Yeah, copy with that. Next up we have Point the Way. A green mana, 1 mana green enchantment with Start Your Engines. This is a turn 1 way to get your speed to 1, but it's not actually going to increment your speed because it has its only other ability is 3 and a green, sacrifice this enchantment. Search your library for up to X basic land cards where X is your speed. Put those cards on the battlefield tapped, then shuffle.
So, this is a weird card.
I don't love it. Like,
Notably, it's really bad in the mid to late game.
and notably, it's also bad on turn 4.
Yes. Oh, on what do you mean by on turn 4? Do you mean cracking it on turn 4 or playing it on turn 4?
Cracking on turn 4.
Yes. On turn 4, if you crack it, it's pretty lucky if you get 2 lands.
And also, I'm not that excited about the card Explosive Vegetation in most limited formats. Like, we've just seen that card be printed over and over again, just Explosive Vegetation with upside, and it's just oftentimes unplayable.
It is true that starting your engines on turn 1 is sort of a categorically valuable effect, but not most of the time in green, I don't think.
And also not on a 1 mana enchantment that doesn't actually enable it.
Right. Now, this card can get 4 lands at some point in the game.
Yeah, and
I mean, that's significant. Like
It's
in a
notable.
format with so many exhaust abilities, so many activated
There's
abilities,
a lot of ways to use your mana.
a lot of ways to use your mana, and it thins you.
5 mana for that.
Yeah, I think most of the time this card is just not worth putting in your deck.
My default on this card is I want to put it at 10.
I think I want to put it at a 10. I think it has high enough upside that I'm willing to be wrong on this, and I think there's a
Yeah.
possibility that it's like surprisingly good, but I'm going to bet against that to start.
Yeah, I agree. I'm pretty confident calling it 10.
Next, we have Plow Through. Single green for a sorcery. Choose one. Prey upon. Target creature you control fights target creature an opponent controls. Or destroy target vehicle. Kind of sweet. I mean, Prey upon is not that good in limited anymore, but single mana Doomblade a vehicle? Kind of nice.
And having options for both. Like,
You're often going to be down like half a card when you do that, because vehicles often get a little bit of value when they enter, but you're up like 4 mana, or like 3 mana, probably.
Yeah.
So that kind of evens out on the trade, and then like it's just a 1 mana fight spell, which can be really nice to fit into a curve. Never that good, but like
yeah.
pretty playable.
But like you also like normally like you have a 4 mana 4/4 in green, and there's a bunch of 4 mana 3/4s. Like
Yeah.
that's a trade you're very happy to make with a fight spell.
Yep.
And if you can like get situations like those, like trading your 3/3 into a 3/2, or your 3/2 creature, like 3/2 drop into one of the many 1/3s, like the 1/3 flyer.
Yeah.
That's how you get them.
This is sort of green's version of like a shock, I would sort of say, in that like it can destroy things that are a little bit bigger, but it's conditional in a pretty similar way, and its best use is getting mana advantages. So I would give this like a 6 maybe.
That's where I'm at too. I was thinking it was either gonna be a 5 or a 7, so I'm gonna put it at 6.
Yep, I think 6 is fair.
Defend the Rider. Single green, instant. Choose one. Target permanent you control gains hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Or create a 1/1 colorless pilot creature token with can crew with a 2 or greater crew thing. It's a 1/1 that can crew 3 and saddle 3. So 1 mana instant, protect your creature or crew your vehicle at instant speed and get them.
Yep. This is kind of nice, I think.
Yeah, I think it's pretty nice, yeah.
It's flexible enough, like, there are going to be enough situations where the hexproof and indestructible is not very good, but the 1/1 is, like, fine enough to be worth almost a card. And for 1 mana at instant speed, that's fine.
Notably, though, like, the pilot is a lot more valuable for vehicles, and there's not that many vehicles in green.
Yes.
So, like, you'll be relying on it being
Your
good with
secondary
your color.
Yeah. I like this card, though. Like, 1 mana hexproof indestructible until end of turn to a permanent, that will often trade up on mana and even on cards. And then it's got a decent-ish buyout. So, like, I think this is probably a good card. I would give it a 6, I think.
I'm between 6 and 7 on it, yeah.
Yeah.
About there's good enough for me.
I'm not taking it over the good commons, but I'm taking it over the very medium commons. So I think that's a 6.
I'd agree.
Greenbelt Guardian. 1 and a green for a 2/2 Elf Ranger. It has an activated ability that is not an exhaust ability, just green, target creature gains trample until end of turn. And then it does have an exhaust ability as well, which is 3 and a green, put 3 +1/+1 counters on this creature.
Card's pretty efficient.
Pretty efficient. I mean, it's
Like,
mostly just a 2 mana 2/2 until you activate its exhaust. But then it's a 4 mana 5/5 sort of.
Yeah, and also, like, green, target creature gains trample until end of turn. That can be pretty nice for building speed. Like, obviously, green is not trying to build speed that much, but it's also pretty good with, like, a big green dumbass.
We have said green isn't trying to build speed that much, like on 4 or 5 different cards. Maybe green just is trying to build speed.
Part of it is the cards that we've noted
are not very good.
Are not very good at building speed.
Yes, that's true.
Like, that's part of the factor there. It's not like, oh, wait, this card actually kind of helps green. It's like, no, oh, this card also lines up poorly.
Green has more cards that care about speed than are good at building speed.
Yeah.
Okay, I think this card is pretty good. Like, I think the exhaust ability is the key to making it good. You don't really want to play it as just a 2 mana 2/2, but you don't have to. It'll just be that sometimes. It might trade off if you need a defensive speed 2-drop, and then it becomes a really relevant creature at some point later.
Yeah.
I would give this...
6.
Yeah, 6. I think this is a 6.
I'll take a 6 pick. Next up, we have Dredger's Insight. 1 and a green enchantment. When one or more artifact and or creature cards leave your graveyard, you gain 1 life. When this enchantment enters, mill 4 cards. You may put an artifact, creature, or land card from among the mill cards into your hand.
Fascinating.
Pretty good.
Pretty good.
2 mana, mill 4 cards. From among those cards, grab an
It's interesting that if you grab a land, it doesn't trigger. Which is like a little bit weird, just design-wise.
That is pretty weird. But also, if it hit lands, I think they'd have wider constructed applications.
Well, it does hit lands. It just
no,
doesn't trigger off lands.
Gain life off lands.
Yes, I see what you're saying.
Weird implications, maybe. Although I'm still dubious of that. They could have still done that. Made it interesting. Yeah.
This card's fine, but it's not actively good in limited. Like,
it doesn't affect the board at all. It's just card selection. It's not like good recursion because you're not.
Doesn't help you build speed, and gaining the life back doesn't help prevent your opponent from building speed.
Yeah, and it's also not that much life gain because we haven't seen that many cards that like are consistently going in and out of your graveyard in a way that's efficient.
And it's also just true that like this is not, I don't think, a format where you care a lot about milling stuff, where these effects are a lot better. And I also don't think you care about incidental enchantments on the battlefield specifically. Yeah. So I think this might be worse than it looks, because it's like a fine rate for this effect. It's quite competitive in like constructed formats. I think in this limited format, it's probably not set up to be super great.
I agree.
I would give this
8?
An 8 probably. It's never that bad.
I can see it ending up as a 9, but it's efficient enough though. Like,
yeah.
It's
also obviously better if you have like bombs to dig to or something. Yep. It'll gain you a couple life maybe over the course of a game, which is a little bit nice, but like it doesn't really offset the fact that you're spending 2 mana to not impact the board and just like filter cards a little bit. Alright, 8 for Dredger's Insight. Next up, Elvish Refueler. 2 and a green for a 2/3. During your turn, as long as you haven't activated an exhaust ability this turn, you may activate exhaust abilities as though they haven't been activated. So this is the card you were talking about.
This
that just
Very
lets you
interesting
repeat the abilities, but only like one of them per turn.
Yeah,
And
these are
then-
pretty expensive, so you only have the ability for one.
Right. And then this has exhaust 1 in a green, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Activate each exhaust ability only once, except not really for this creature. Because if it's on the battlefield, you can activate it more than once.
Yeah, this card is I think a really interesting build around, where it's like, its rate by itself, 2 in a green, 2/3, 2 mana, put a counter on it once per turn. Pretty good. But, like,
yeah,
not great.
kind of. It's
Like-
fine. I think it's like a little bit below rate, but not that much.
Yeah, like the fact that it by itself just continued to pump itself every turn, like it sucks you have to do it on your turn, but like,
I think the key though is that your opponent can't really let this creature stick around in a board stall.
yes, no, exactly. Like there's enough like
Exhaust abilities are costed so that you can't activate them more than once.
exactly like this fundamentally breaks that paradigm of like, oh yeah, my exhaust ability makes me a token once. It's like, oh no, the tokens, the many tokens.
Yeah.
And also like with the 3/5 vehicle, you can start like making Thopters every turn too. Even just this plus the 3/5 vehicle is like 2 mana, put a counter, make a Thopter, play my other spell.
That's really, really nice.
Like,
yeah.
I think this plays really nicely into the exhaust synergy space because of that.
Fully agree. This is like a very high upside build around for exhaust, and there's a lot of exhaust creatures in this set.
Yes.
I would give this a 4 for the upside.
That's about where I'm at too. I don't think I want to go as high as a 3 just because of like the body not being like super competitive.
But it's not
Oh,
that
like-
bad.
It's up there. Like
Yeah.
I'm excited about this card.
Yeah, I am also excited
I've-
about this card.
Also just been impressed by almost all the exhaust synergy payoffs.
Yes.
Like the blue one being the blue draw card, we put out like a 2. The 3/5 vehicle and blue green, like
They are all gated by mana, which I think is an important reason that they might be high upside, is just
Yes.
like you're spending a lot of mana, and often in limited you can't do that, and lots of decks will have ways to do that that aren't synergy based, so like, you know, I think it's important to remember that, but
This is
like,
true.
still, I think this deck has the potential to be pretty sweet.
Yes.
Next we have Rise.
from the Wreck. 2 in a green sorcery. Return up to 1 target creature card. Return up to 1 target creature card, up to 1 target mount card, up to 1 target vehicle card, and up to 1 target creature card with no abilities from your graveyard to your hand. We finally found one
we
of
got
the
through
playoffs.
reading it.
And
Interesting.
This card, at its very best, draws you 3.5 cards. And yes, this is me dissing the creature card with no abilities.
This is so rarely gonna draw you more than 2 cards, I think.
I agree. Yeah. It's very hard because that separate cost requires you to have drawn those separate cards and for them to be in your graveyard.
Yeah.
It is kind of a mill payoff.
Yeah.
Like, if you have the perfect ratio of these 4 things and you're playing some self-mill, like, maybe I'll draw 3 cards on average. But I think it's still going to be pretty hard to do that because then that requires like a very specific ratio of cards in deck building. Reminiscent of Delirium, but also a subset of cards that's not including instant or sorceries.
This is a very specific subset of cards, and they're all creatures. So, like,
Yes.
you've got to have a lot of creatures with very slightly different typing. I mean, vehicles aren't exactly creatures, but they're basically
Yeah.
creatures for, like, creature count and decks and stuff. Yeah,
also-
I'm not excited about this.
It's also like as card draw, yeah, you're going up cards, but you're not going up interaction almost at all.
Right. You're not going up lands to cast those cards. Like,
Yeah.
I think Divination is, like, a lot better than this.
Yeah.
You might just play it if you have a bomb, and like it's a fine value card that can also just recur your bomb. But 3 mana is a lot to do that, like a lot. Like normally getting 1 creature back costs black, so you have to be getting 2 things back to even make this like remotely competitive in terms of rate, and you're like that's like usually the best upside. Sometimes you'll get 3 creatures back and you'll feel like a little bit good about that, but like
It's just such a high setup cost.
yeah, really high setup
And it
costs.
doesn't impact the board by itself.
I want to give this a 10.
I would give it a 9. I think there is like, as the top end of your like, because like notably you can return 2 mounts.
Yes,
Right? Like in your mount deck, this could be like your endgame redundancy.
that's true.
on
If you have
your
like
engine
4 or
pieces.
5 mounts, this is just kind of a double raise dead.
Yeah.
But I don't even think double Raise Dead for 3 mana is like a good card in limited anymore.
I don't think it's great. I think it's a card that you'll sometimes take as your card advantage in a deck that doesn't otherwise have card advantage and just wants redundancy on your like individual mount pieces, like the 2/1 Death Touch that trades off.
Okay, I'm fine giving this a 9. I think it might even just be a 10. But...
I think there's some spots where you might want it, but I'm not excited about it. Like I think it's like I think it's like by the old range, like a low D range card in terms of how it plays, but I don't think it's stone cold playable.
Yep, I think that makes sense.
And I'm happy to take it like over some things sometimes, but rarely.
Next up, we have Fang Guardian. 3 and a green for a 4/2 Ape Druid with Flash, and when it enters, another target creature or vehicle you control gets +2/+2 until end of turn.
This card's good, I think.
This card's good.
Oh, we haven't seen this in a while.
Yeah, a Flash creature that is also a combat trick.
Yeah, I think this card's quite good.
I think it's only good. Like, 4/2 is not a super competitive body for 4 mana, so you really do need to be getting a full card off of the Enters ability to have it be, like, genuinely really good. I mean, that's going to be hard to do.
I think 4 toughness is kind of like the break point to match up against.
But so this has 2 toughness, which
no, but I'm saying it has 4 power,
better.
So it can trade into like the 3/2, 3/4s and stuff like that.
Right.
Like it'll trade into a lot of 4 drops and a good number of 5 drops.
Sure.
And also make another creature trade or eat.
Yes, but I think that's a very ideal scenario still.
Yeah.
Like, you're describing a scenario where they're attacking you with 2 creatures, you have 1 creature, you just have 4 mana up, you just passed on your turn, and they don't have any interaction even though they haven't cast anything on their turn. Like,
my point is more that this card just, like, if you're happy trading it, will trade into most creatures in this format, including some of the bigger ones.
I think the only point I'm making is that 4 mana is a inefficient way to do that.
Yeah, I guess that on top of being a trick, to me adds up to being, like, doing a lot for 1 card.
It does, but it's I think the setup cost is higher than you're making it out to be. You have to have pretty specific scenarios happen to genuinely get more than 1 card worth of value out of this.
Yeah. I mean, the specific scenario is you engage in combat with your creatures when you have 4 mana up and this card in your hand.
Right. That is actually quite a lot, I think. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's really good when you get to do that, but it's also not, like, broken. Like, you didn't get a full 2-for-1 because you spent 4 mana on a 4/2. I think this card is good, but I don't think it's premium, is I guess how I'll put it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's getting up to, like, the 1, 2, 3 range for me, but I think it's between a 4 and a 5.
I was going to give it a 6.
I think I like this.
I think this card is not great when you're behind.
I think it's fine when you're behind, unless you're, like, really behind and have no creatures in play. Like, it can still help you leverage a slightly behind board to trade off 2 things and, like, simplify the board.
Yeah.
I think, for me, I'm, like, pretty confident putting this at, like, around a 5. Because I agree the body isn't ideal, but I do think the effect is, like, powerful.
I don't think we disagree that much, but I'm going to stick to my guns a little bit, and I'm going to say this is only a 6, not a 5. That's my instinct.
Fair enough.
4 mana is just a lot. You're getting a good amount of value out of your 4-drop is my argument, but I don't think you're getting, like, a substantially different amount of value out of your 4-drop than most average 4-drops, just a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Alright, next up we have Fang Druid Summoner. We have it's 3 and a green for a 2/4 reach Ape Druid. So 4 mana 2/4 reach. Not excited about that body, but, like, it's not awful.
Yeah, Giant Spider has been playable and limited for a really long time. Yes. I don't think it is anymore, but it's not that far off of being playable.
But we're not done yet. When this creature enters, you may search your library and or graveyard for a creature card with no abilities. Reveal it and put it into your hand. If you search your library this way, shuffle.
Mora, are you ready to combine 2 extremely mediocre cards into a pretty good card?
Oh yeah. And by that I mean, I'm not actually sure. Like, so the no ability cards we've seen so far, white is a 2 mana 3/3, which I actively like. I think that's probably the best one.
For sure.
Blue is a 2 mana 0/8. Get that card away from my other defensive creature that's trying to draw a real card. Black is 1 black, 7/2. Card's hard to cast. Red is a 2 mana 4/1. Sure, that'll probably be my graveyard and I'll pick it up. That's fine. I don't really want Giant Spider in my red-green deck. The green one, which we haven't seen yet, 2 green for a 9/7. And so, like...
We had a bit of a discussion about that card the other day.
It's not a good card. But we'll get into that once we get to that card. But, like, all the... Basically... And there's also the 2 mana 3/2 vanilla in green as well. So green has 2 separate creatures to grab on this. One of them a common. But I don't think, besides those 6 cards, there are any.
Yeah.
Like, there's not that many cards with just out text these days.
And I think none of them are cards, besides the white one, that you, like, really want in your deck.
Yeah.
And so if you're playing this with them, like, this only becomes an actively good card when you play other pretty bad cards.
Exactly.
Which is a really tough place to be.
Yeah.
Now, this and those other cards are not that far off from being fine. And so this ability might make them fine. But all you're doing is combining 2 bad cards into ultimately, like, fine playable cards.
Yeah, I agree. I think I want this card.
I think if I had 2 of these, I would play 2, like, medium, what are they, vanilla creatures, I guess. Like, and then I would be, like, somewhat happy with that package. But
yeah. I'm also, like, I'm happy to...
I'm not trying to make that happen.
I'm, like, okay picking one of these up if I already have... If I'm, like, low on 3 drops, but I know I'm playing the 2 mana 3/2 vanilla creature. And then, like, this draws me another 2 mana 3/2 vanilla. Sure, that's fine.
Yeah.
But it's not... I'm not excited about this card, and I don't think I really want to prioritize it at any point. I can't see myself going above an 8, and I think I want to start at 9.
I think I'd like 9 for it, yeah. It's, like, somewhat high upside, but it's just not that high upside.
Yeah, the upside is just so... The stealing
the
of that
upside
is
is
so low.
fine. The upside is medium side.
Yeah. It's just, like, it never draws a great card.
Next, we have Ooze Patrol. 3 and a green for 2/2 Ooze. When this creature enters, mill 2 cards and then put a +1/+1 counter on it for each artifact and or creature in your graveyard.
So here's another graveyard payoff. A large vanilla creature.
Yes, it's an uncommon. It's probably going to be like a 4 mana 3/5/3/5 when you play it on turn 4 most of the time, unless you're actively trying to enable it.
How big do we want it to be before we're happy? Like 6/6?
I think before I'm like really happy, I'd say 6/6. I'm fine with a 5/5, but I'm not that excited about it, especially if I worked somewhat hard to enable it. Like, this is a card that you will put the 1 and a green enchantment that mills 4 into your deck for, but it's also kind of a similar thing of, like, 2 cards becoming medium together.
Yeah, like, it's the best thing this is a large vanilla creature. It doesn't have evasion. It doesn't, like, have anything else impactful. It doesn't, like, have instant life gain or anything. It's just, like, a beater. Just large. And, like...
I'm pretty underwhelmed by it. Like, it's not super bad ever, because it's pretty often going to be a 4/4 when you cast it.
Which is fine, yeah.
It's fine. It's sometimes going to be a 3/3, and that's kind of not fine.
Yeah, and if it's ever a 2/2, you want to cry.
Yeah, and it will sometimes be a 2/2, because, like, you might just have to cast it on turn 4, and you might just not mill a creature.
Yeah.
I'm putting this at, like, a 9?
I'm also
maybe an 8?
I'm between, like, 8 and 9, yeah. It's like... I don't want to prioritize this card early. It's not doing that much besides draw stats.
I agree.
At best.
There's some graveyard stuff, and it becomes fine in a graveyard deck, but, like, I just don't think it's a really good payoff for the graveyard deck. It's just, like, it becomes playable.
Yeah. Alright, next up. This is the card I mentioned before. Tarion World Tyrant. 2 green, so 5 mana. Legendary creature, Dinosaur Ooze. No abilities, it is a 9/7. So this is a 5 mana 9/7 for triple green.
Explain why this card is bad, Mora.
So this card is great, right? It's 5 mana for a 9/7. That's so many stats. Until they murder and you cry. This card, first off, incredibly hard to cast. Limited mana bases are not good, as we said before with the colorless lands. Like, this card is really, really difficult to cast on turn 5 if you're a 2-color deck. Like, you cannot reliably do that. And the reason why you'd may be excited about a creature with a lot of stats is because you're casting it on curve and you're ahead of your opponent. But this card, it's really, really difficult to do that. So we're expecting this to actually come down like turn 6, turn 7, turn 8, later maybe even. And so at that point, the advantage you're getting off of a lot of stats goes down. Also, though, this card doesn't do anything besides have a lot of stats, which, like, against colors, like, maybe against, like, red or against other green decks, maybe they have a hard time dealing with it. But against, like, blue or black or white, where they have efficient ways to just deal with any creature, you're losing that leverage just by getting 1-for-1. And so, like, there is power in those stats, and there are going to be some games where the card just raw stats can take it away, but also some games where, like, they just kill it, or they just chump block it, or stuff like that. If you're in mono green, I'm, like, a little bit more interested. I think it becomes playable, because it is, like, easy to cast, and so it's just your 5-drop is more efficient than theirs. It's pretty good, but it's not, like, something to write home about, because it's not giving you value. Again, can just be 1-for-1 or chump blocked. Yeah, I think overall, because I don't really expect to ever be in mono green or to be able to draft into that in a normal draft, maybe that'll change. I think I'd never want to really take this card.
Yeah, I think it's just a 10.
Yeah, it's just like...
There will be some games, like you were saying, that it is quite good in, but those games are really narrow. Like, you need to be able to cast it on turn 5. You need your opponent to not have a removal spell for it that trades up on mana. And you need to have them not just have a wide board that can chump and race this.
Yeah.
That's pretty tough. That's a very small slice of games. And in any other game than exactly that structure, it's pretty bad. So this card is just generally pretty bad, and sometimes it'll be fine.
And yeah, sometimes also important to keep in mind it could be a good sideboard card.
Yes.
If you're 1, heavy green, and 2, know your opponent's interaction and creatures line up awfully into
Like,
it.
for example, if they're just the red deck with a bunch of the 4 mana deal 6 in red.
Yeah, and or just have like a bunch of like random shitters, like 2/2s and stuff, in those kind of colors. And then you know that they're just going to struggle to kill this and also struggle to deploy chump blockers for it.
Right.
And you could also have incidental synergies, like the 2-drop that gives something trample, which is quite nice with this.
I actually think that, like, a bunch of random shitters is not what you want to bring this in against, because that is a go wide deck.
I guess when I say a bunch of random shitters, I don't mean like a bunch of
4 mana 3/4s is what I want to bring this in against.
A bunch of like, when I say shitters, I mean like they're playing their 2 mana 2/2s and like 3-drops and their 4-drops. They're not going like, they don't have like incidental shitters. They're spending cards on their random shitters that don't scale up very high in power.
So by shitters you just mean generic creatures.
Yes.
Okay. Yep.
Not
pretty
little,
bad.
Yeah.
I would say 10.
I'm happy with it at 10. Yeah.
Next up, we have Earth Rumbler. 4 and a green for a 7/6 Vigilance Trample vehicle, so it's not a creature. It's got Crew 3, which is a lot.
A lot, but it's big.
Yes, it is quite big. And it also has an alternate crew cost, which is exile an artifact or creature card from your graveyard. This vehicle becomes an artifact creature until end of turn.
Huh.
So you get like a couple free crews, which is a lot of free crews.
For a 7/6, yeah.
I mean, it is a little bit anti-synergistic because green, we've seen, likes artifacts and creatures in its yard. But
it also is like, if it's your one payoff for that,
this
like,
is
it's kind
pretty
of
close to a 5 mana 7/6 Vigilance Trample, although not exactly Vigilance. Kind of Vigilance, just because the crewing is a little bit easier, and the low, like, no mana cost means that you do really have threat of activation on the crew on this, so the Vigilance is actually quite relevant.
And the bottom
5 mana 7/6 Vigilance Trample. How good would that creature be?
I think it would be quite good, but not like overwhelming. Like I would probably take that around a 6 or a 5.
It's significantly better than the 9/7 we were just talking about. Not only because it's single green cost, which matters a lot, but because trample means they just cannot chump block it, and vigilance means it is good at blocking as well as attacking.
Yeah, it can, those kind of threats can like seal up games, because you're just like, attack, you can't block it, you can't attack me, repeat.
So all in all, I think this package comes to being like a surprisingly playable card for a 5-mana vehicle.
Yeah, I think the setup cost is important not to underrate. Like, there's got to be some spots where, like, creatures stuck around or their creature light draws, you just can't enable it easily. But also, like, it does have the creepy buyout.
Right, and if you have a creature light draw and, like, your only 2 creatures got killed, you can just, like, block with this until you draw more creatures.
Yeah.
Which is pretty nice. So, I would say this is, like, an 8, maybe even a 7.
I think it's between 6 and 7. I think I'm happy with 7.
Yeah, I think 7's fair.
Like, it's a good 5-drop. It's chonky.
But it is just a 5-drop.
Yep. You can also cycle creatures to enable it at instant speed.
That's true.
Which is nice.
That's really nice, actually, yeah. Look out for that, folks.
Yeah. Next, we have Aetherdrift Mammoth. 4 green for a 5/5. Saddle 5. That's a lot. When this creature enters, and whenever it attacks while saddled, create a 3/3 green elephant creature token. That's actually a lot for one card, huh?
Yeah, so this is really a 6-mana 5/5 plus 3/3.
Yes.
Which I think is, like, on rate for 6-drop.
Mm-hmm.
Not great, but, like, 2 bodies is really good at stabilizing you. I would say that's, like, roughly equally good at stabilizing you as the 6/6 reach gain 4.
That
Maybe
checks,
a little bit worse, but also a little bit better at attacking.
Yeah, but also just doesn't hit the flyer angle at all.
And then in, like, a really big board stall, you can be saddling this over turns and making more 3/3s.
And it also saddles itself kind of halfway.
What is that?
3/3.
Oh, yeah, it makes a creature to saddle it. I see what
Which
you're
is,
saying.
like, very relevant.
It's relevant, yeah. But, like, it's also hard for me to imagine this not getting saddled once and then entering combat and dying.
Yeah.
That's still fine.
Yeah,
you made 2
3/3s.
3/3s.
Like the grave mammoth.
I would say this is, like, roughly equal to that other 6-drop. Like, I don't think it's that much better. 4 green cycling 2 6/6 reach, gain 4.
Yeah.
I would say it's roughly equal. I don't think it's really better than that. Like, making a body is really nice, but not having cycling is a pretty big cost on your 6-drop. Mm-hmm. And gain 4 plus reach, I think, is, like, almost as much as make a 3/3. I like this card, but I don't love this card.
I do think this card can run away with the game in a way that the other 6-mana 6/6 gain 4 can't.
Yes,
like, this
but
card
I think it can also lose games that the other one wouldn't, because you're losing to flyers or something.
I agree with that, yeah.
And you don't have cycling. So I think both of those things balance out to actually being, like, very similar.
That's fair
levels
enough.
Of card.
Yeah.
What did we give that card? Like a 7? I think I would give this right around there.
Yeah, that seems fine with me. Just it being a 6-drop is
right. 6-drop is rough. I think a lot of people will expect this card to be better than that, just because it's a really sweet impact and, like, effect. But 6-drops are tough and limited,
and there's so many ways to spend mana.
Yeah, it's worth it. Don't get me wrong. Like, the fact that I'm giving a 6-drop that doesn't have any alternate costs a 7 means that I really like it.
Yes,
but it's still a 6-drop. And that's it.
We're free.
We're done for the commons and uncommons. We'll be doing rares and mythics probably later this week. We've got lots of stuff to do this weekend, but we will be coming back. There will be early access at some point this week, which I will have access to. All the Pro Tour players do, so that'll be fun.
Amazing.
Yeah, it'll be great.
Cool.
Thanks for listening, y'all. Appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in.
I'll be posting this on Patreon probably, like, Monday or Tuesday, and then we'll be also recording the Rares and Mythics at some point around then probably too, and then that'll come out maybe, like, later in the week. And this will probably be the last, at least, big piece of content before PT prep really starts, and I'm going to be taking a little bit of a content hiatus. So yeah, cool. Look forward to getting back from the PT and writing something up. But thanks y'all for listening.
Thanks for tuning in.
So excited to draft limited, like, to be diving into a limited format again. It's going to be great.
It'll be great.
All right. See y'all.
Bye.